Chapter 224. Seeing that the constable did not back down even after hearing about the Zhou family, the Transcendent Realm Cultivator looked at the other person and said, "I'll stop him. You take the young master back first." Of course, the Zhou family's disciples could not be taken away like this. This was their duty as guards. Once they reached the Zhou family, everything that happened would be shouldered by the Zhou family. It would have nothing to do with them. Anger rose in Li Mu's heart. It was one thing to ride a horse on the streets. People like Wei Ping, Xianxia, and Zhu Tsong were just a little arrogant and liked to bully people with their power. The people suffered some losses and did not dare to speak out. But this person from the Zhou family was different. He rode a horse while drunk and killed people on the streets. Not only did he not feel any remorse, he became even more arrogant. A fresh human life was nothing in his eyes. The two Transcendent Realm Cultivators clearly did not care about this human life either. Li Mu looked at them and said coldly, "Killing, fleeing, resisting arrest. According to the laws of Great Zhou, you can be executed on the spot as a warning to others." The middle-aged man was a Transcendent Realm Cultivator. He stood in front of the Transcendent Realm Cultivator and said with a smile, "You can try." Li Mu looked at him and asked, "Are the lives of people so cheap in your eyes?" The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "I cannot let you take the young master away. This is my duty." Li Mu looked at him coldly and said, "Sorry, this is also my duty. I am arresting the murderer according to the law. Those who stop me will be punished as well." As he finished speaking, a sword light slashed towards the middle-aged man's head. Swoosh. The middle-aged man pulled out the long knife at his waist and blocked it. Clang. After the sound of metal clashing, the long knife in his hand broke in two and fell to the ground with a clang. At the same time, one of his arms fell to the ground. With Li Mu's current cultivation, using Bai as a regular weapon was actually not enough. After all, Bai was only in the Shen class. Its greatest use was Madame Chu, who could provide Li Mu with level 4 mana. If he used Bai alone against level 4 cultivators, this sword would instead weaken the power he could unleash. Therefore, when he swung his sword down, he sent Bai into the Flask Heaven Ring and replaced it with the Qingxian sword. An ordinary sword strike had broken the middle-aged man's saber and severed his arm. His mystic-ranked high-grade weapon was broken into two, and at the same time, his arm was broken as well. The middle-aged man stared blankly for a moment, then his complexion greatly changed. He hurriedly used his other hand to take out a piece of fulu and stuck it on the severed arm. Only then did he manage to stop the madly gushing blood. He sat on the ground and circulated his magic power to regulate his breathing. Before the other middle-aged man could leave with the young man, he saw this shocking scene. Li Mu pointed his sword at the two of them and said indifferently, "Killing and fleeing, one of you try to escape?" The remaining middle-aged man's face turned ugly. He didn't expect a spirit condensation cultivator to have such a divine weapon. But he still had to take the young master away. He grabbed the young man's shoulder, and the two of them rose into the air, ready to leave. Li Mu waved his hand and threw out a piece of fulu. The fulu turned into a ray of golden light and entered the middle-aged man's body. He only felt the magic power in his body stagnate, and he suddenly couldn't circulate it. Both he and the young man fell from the sky. He hit the ground and stared at Li Mu. He asked, "Do you really want to become enemies with the Zhou clan?" It wasn't Li Mu who became enemies with the Zhou clan, but the Zhou clan who became enemies with him. And this wasn't the first time. This time it was time to settle the old and new scores together. Of the two middle-aged men, one was severely injured with a severed arm, and the other's magic power was sealed. Li Mu walked in front of the young man and said, "You want to escape after killing someone? Do you think there are no laws in the Immortal's capital?" It seemed that he wouldn't be able to escape today. The young man wasn't afraid. He only looked at Li Mu mockingly and said, "Let's go." He didn't have anything on him. Li Mu looked at the bailiffs from the Ministry of Justice who were hiding in the distance. He saw one of them holding a metal chain and said from afar, "Lend me your metal chain." The bailiffs looked around, threw the metal chain on the ground and silently retreated. Li Mu waved his hand and the metal chain flew into his hand. He tied up Zhou Chu and walked to the old man who was hit. He sighed and looked around. He asked, "Who is willing to help me carry the old man's body to the county yamen?" The crowd was in a commotion. Soon a man stood out and said, "Constable Li, I'll do it." Li Mu saluted him. "Thank you." The man grinned and said, "It's my duty." Li Mu held the metal chain in his hand as if he was leading a dog. Zhou Chu followed behind him. The two middle-aged men followed closely behind him. Wherever they went, the streets were in an uproar. Why did that man lose an arm? It's so scary. Isn't that young Master Zhou of the Zhou family? Why is he chained up? What crime did he commit? Does it matter what crime he committed? What matters is who dared to arrest him. Didn't you see? The one holding the chain is Constable Li. Other than Constable Li, who else in Luoyang would dare to do such a thing? This is going to be a big show. It's the Zhou family. Show my ass. I'm worried about Constable Li. If something happens to him, who will redress the grievances of the people of Luoyang? At the entrance of Luoyang Yamen, Wei Peng was greeted by Yang Xiu and Zhu Kang. After 5 days in prison he looked haggard. His hair was messy, his eye sockets were dark, and his beard was unshaven. However, he was in high spirits. He held a thick copy of the Great Zhou Law in his arms and said regretfully, "If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have suffered so many losses at the hands of Li Mu." Yang Xiu looked at him and asked, "What do you plan to do next?" Wei Peng looked around and said, "I'm not done with him yet. I'm going to..." Before he could finish, he suddenly saw a group of people walking toward the Yamen. The one walking in front was Li Mu, whom he had been thinking about day and night for the past 5 days. At this moment, Li Mu's face was gloomy and murderous. He held a metal chain in his hand. A person was tied up behind the chain. Wei Peng recognized him at a glance. He was Zhou Chu of the Zhou family. This was the kind of person he usually met on the streets and needed to avoid. But now Zhou Chu was being chained up by Li Mu like a dog. Beside Zhou Chu were his 2 bodyguards. One of them had a broken arm and half his body was dyed red with blood. The glaring red color made Wei Peng dizzy. Yang Xiu's attention was on Wei Peng and did not see this scene. He asked curiously, "What are you going to do?" Wei Peng swallowed and said, "I'm going to study the Great Zhou Law carefully after I go back. I think we were wrong in the past. I must be a law-abiding person in the future." Yang Xiu was stunned. He thought he was hallucinating. In the next moment he seemed to have realized something and he looked forward. He was startled when he saw Li Mu walking towards him with an iron chain that had Zhou Chu tied to it. Wei Peng and the other 2 blocked the Yamen door. Li Mu said in a deep voice, "Move." Before Yang Xiu could react, he was pulled away by Wei Peng and the other 2. Li Mu brought Zhou Chu and the other 2 in. They could still smell the pungent smell of blood. Yang Xiu said in disbelief, "Am I seeing things?" Li Mu caught Zhou Chu. Zhu Tsong swallowed and said, "You're not seeing things. That's Zhou Chu." Yang Xiu was still in disbelief. Although Zhou Chu was not a direct descendant of the Zhou clan, he was one of the most difficult people to provoke among the Zhou clan disciples. He was the kind of person that no one dared to look at when walking on the streets. He murmured, "Catching Zhou Chu? Is he crazy?" Wei Peng's face was a little pale. He said, "This person doesn't want to live. We'd better not provoke him in the future." At the back of the Yamen, Zhang Chun was tasting tea. For the past 2 days, he had been in a very good mood, especially when he saw Li Mu's gloomy expression. He had to let him have a taste of the bitterness in his heart at that time. Thinking like this in his heart, when he saw Li Mu walk in with a cold face, the smile on his face became bigger. He said, "Li Mu, sit down and have a cup of tea." Li Mu said, "No, there's a murder case that needs to be heard by Darren." "What?" Zhang Chun immediately lost the mood to drink tea. He stood up and asked solemnly, "What kind of case?" Li Mu said briefly, "Someone was drunk and rode a horse on the street. An old man was killed. I have brought him back. Darren needs to deal with him." Zhang Chun strode to the front of the Yamen and said angrily, "Outrageous, who is so bold?" Li Mu said, "Zhou family Zhou Chu." Zhang Chun's footsteps stopped. His face was a little pale. He turned back and asked, "Which Zhou family?" Li Mu looked at him and said, "There's no doubt. It's the Zhou family that Darren is thinking of." Zhang Chun's body swayed. He held the wall to steady himself. He looked at Li Mu and said angrily, "I just took advantage of you a little. Do you have to treat me like this?" Chapter 225. Zhang Chun looked at Li Mu and felt like he had nothing to live for. He had just offended some of the officials in the old party and was even labeled as a member of the new party. In the blink of an eye, Li Mu had captured the Zhou family members. The Zhou family was the core of the new party. All the officials in the new party had to rely on the Zhou family for survival. Now in the vast Luoyang, there was no place for Zhang Chun in the old party or the new party. He knew that the residence given to him by His Majesty was not for nothing. What he owed now he would have to pay it back one day. But Zhang Chun did not expect this day to come so soon. Jianghu County magistrates were furious. Li Mu also felt wronged. That was a human life, a living human life. Even if he wasn't a bailiff and didn't have this responsibility on his shoulders as a mere human, he couldn't just watch as Zhou Chu arrogantly left after committing murder. But as a constable he was only responsible for arresting people. After he was arrested, Lord Zhang would have to take the blame. This seemed unfair to him. Should he ask His Majesty to transfer him to the Ministry of Justice through Mr. Mei? Li Mu was thinking about the feasibility of this idea. Zhang Chun's eyes suddenly lit up. He said, "Wait, I am now the Minister of Luoyang. You can go to the Commandant of Luoyang to solve the case." Li Mu shook his head and reminded him, "Although His Majesty promoted you, he did not appoint you as the Commandant of Luoyang. You are still in charge of all matters in the Luoyang Yamen." Zhang Chun was stunned. "If that's the case, this official's promotion was for nothing?" Li Mu nodded. "You can see it that way." The light in Zhang Chun's eyes dimmed again. He covered his face with both hands and said angrily, "What a sin!" After a while he removed his hands from his face. His eyes changed from hesitation to determination. He seemed to have made a decision. Yang Xiu, Zhu Tsong and the others were still at the entrance of the yamen. Zhu Tsong stood outside and looked inside. He asked, "What do you think they will do?" Yang Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't know either. But according to the law, if a horse kills someone he should pay with his life." Wei Peng glanced at him and said disdainfully, "You're the son of the director of the Ministry of Justice. There are many different situations when a horse hits someone. It's impossible to generalize." "What do you mean?" Zhu Tsong asked. Wei Peng thought for a moment and said, "There are several situations when a horse runs into someone and causes death. If you didn't break the law and ride a horse on the official road and someone rushes out from the side and is killed by the horse, the responsibility is on him. You only need to pay a small amount of money. If he was walking on the official road and you accidentally killed him while riding a horse, the responsibility would be on you. You would have to compensate for all the losses. But because it was just a mistake, you don't have to pay with your life and you don't even have to go to jail. Not only do you have to take full responsibility for killing someone with your horse after drinking, you will also have to go to jail. This is under the circumstances where riding a horse is allowed. Riding a horse is not allowed in Luoyang. That's another crime. Riding a horse while drunk is another crime. Murder and escape is another crime. Resisting arrest is another crime." Wei Peng flipped open the law of Great Zhou in his hand and said, "What Zhou Chu did was extremely bad. If it were someone else, it wouldn't be too much to sentence him to death." Zhu Tsong swallowed his saliva. He suddenly felt that compared to Zhou Chu, his image was suddenly lofty. Although he also liked to ride a horse on the streets of Luoyang, he didn't dare to ride too fast. He would give the people blocking his way time to dodge. He just wanted to show off and didn't want to kill someone. Wei Peng walked into the yard of the yamen and said, "Let's see what they will do." In the court of the Luoyang yamen, the old man's body was lying flat on the ground. After the coroner of the yamen examined the injuries, he said, "Your Honor, the victim's sternum is all broken. He died from the collision." Zhang Chun looked at the old man and closed his eyes. After a while he slowly opened them and looked at Zhou Chu. He said, "Offender Zhou Chu, you broke the law by riding a horse while drunk on the streets of Luoyang and killed an innocent old man. On the way to escape you resisted arrest. Countless people on the streets witnessed it. Do you plead guilty?" Zhou Chu had sobered up. He looked at him indifferently and said, "I plead guilty." "It's good that you plead guilty." Zhang Chun sat back in the main seat and said, "According to the law of Great Zhou, Book 5, Article 13, if you break the law by riding a horse on the streets of Luoyang and cause serious injury or death, you will be sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. You rode a horse while drunk and attempted to escape after killing someone. You also ordered your subordinates to attack the yamen arresters of Luoyang. The circumstances are extremely bad and have caused serious consequences. I sentence you to be executed and immediately sent to the Ministry of Justice for review." Zhou Chu shrugged and said indifferently, "As long as you like it." Zhang Chun said, "Men, throw these 3 into prison first." 2 yamen runners walked over with fear on their faces. Zhou Chu looked at them with disdain and said, "Where's the prison? I'll walk by myself." Seeing Zhou Chu being taken away without fear, Li Mu did not feel relieved. This was because he knew that this was not the end but only the beginning. Zhang Chun walked down from the court and patted his shoulder. He said, "Don't be discouraged. You didn't do anything wrong." Li Mu was actually a little embarrassed to face Zhang Chun. As a subordinate, he had never let Zhang Chun be at ease. Everything he did in Luoyang was actually because he had a strong backing. He was just a small official. The old and new parties could not suppress him through the court. If they wanted to use secret methods, they would have to send out a sixth realm cultivator. Even if it was a sixth realm cultivator, Li Mu could temporarily hold them off for 15 minutes. If they wanted to get rid of Li Mu secretly, they would have to send out a seventh realm cultivator. A cultivator of that level was a deterrent in both parties. They were used to keep the empress in check. They would not listen to the orders of the Zhou clan or the Shao clan, and they would not care about a small official like Li Mu. Therefore, although Li Mu's status was low, he could do whatever he wanted in Luoyang. However, Zhang Chun was different. He was as timid as a mouse, but he had a strong sense of justice. He wanted to hide from everything, but whenever he needed to stand up, he would stand up without hesitation. This time he had completely offended the Zhou clan. Li Mu looked at him and asked, "Have you thought it through, sir?" Zhang Chun let out a long sigh and said, "I didn't get promoted for nothing, and I didn't live in this house for nothing. This is life." Li Mu asked, "Sir, do you mean that you've accepted your fate?" "No." Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "We'll make a big deal out of this, the bigger the better. We'll make it so that both the new and old parties can't tolerate me. Then I can be transferred out of Luoyang." Li Mu thought about it carefully and realized that Zhang Chun had a good plan. He was the minister of Luoyang. His position was not high, but it was not low either. Even if he offended both the new and old parties, as long as he did his job well and did not commit crimes or use his power for personal gain, neither party could do anything to him. They could only use some power to push him out of this position and transfer him far away. Out of sight, out of mind. This was exactly what he wanted. No wonder he gave Zhou Chu's case such a harsh verdict. Of course, Zhou Chu's bad behavior had a huge impact, but he probably already had this idea before he decided on the case. Li Mu gave him a thumbs up and praised, "Good, you're really good." Zhou Chu rode his horse on the streets of Luoyang and killed innocent people. He was arrested by the Luoyang Yamen and later sentenced to death by the minister of Luoyang. When this case spread out, it caused a sensation in Luoyang. What shocked people was not that Zhou Chu rode his horse and killed people, but that the Luoyang Yamen dared to sentence the Zhou family to death. Although Zhou Chu was not a direct descendant of the Zhou family, his status in the family was not low. The minister of Luoyang had made a mortal enemy of the Zhou family by doing this. Zhou Chu was just a small sixth-rank official. If he went against the Zhou family, he would not have a good ending. After this, he might not even be able to keep his position. In the Luoyang Yamen. Less than 15 minutes after Zhou Chu was locked up, a man in an official's uniform hurried into the Yamen. When the Yamen saw him, they immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, Minister of Luoyang." The man looked angry and asked, "Where's Zhang Chun?" One of the Yamen pointed and said, "Minister Zhang is at the back of the Yamen." Soon Zhang Chun, who was drinking tea at the back of the Yamen, saw the minister of Luoyang. He had only heard about it but had never seen it before. Before him, the Luoyang Yamen was dispensable. Even the officials there were officials from other departments. They would not come to the Yamen on a normal day. As the minister of Luoyang, this was his first time seeing the minister of Luoyang. The minister of Luoyang reprimanded him, "Your men captured Zhou Chu and you sentenced him to death?" Zhang Chun said, "Zhou Chu was drunk and rode his horse to kill people. He fled and resisted arrest. Is it wrong for me to sentence him to death?" The minister of Luoyang gritted his teeth and said, "Do you know who he is?" Zhang Chun said calmly, "I don't care who he is. If he broke the law, he should be punished according to the law. The last one who bent the law was beheaded by His Majesty." The minister of Luoyang explained, "What I mean is that you don't have to punish him so harshly. You can take him into custody first and judge him slowly." Zhang Chun asked mockingly, "Take him into custody first and drag it out until the people forget about it. Then close the case hastily. Is this how the Luoyang Yamen used to do things?" The minister of Luoyang pretended not to hear Zhang Chun's mockery. He said, "It's better for you, me and everyone else." Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "I'm sorry. I can't do that." The minister of Luoyang said with a sullen face, "From now on I'll take over this case. You don't have to worry about it anymore." Zhang Chun shrugged and said, "Do as you wish. I've sent the file to the Ministry of Justice anyway. We're just waiting for their approval." The minister of Luoyang pointed at him and said angrily, "You?" Zhang Chun asked, "What about me?" "Your future is gone." The minister of Luoyang said coldly and turned to leave in big strides. Zhang Chun walked out of the door and exhaled deeply. He exclaimed, "Nice." He stood in the courtyard and was silent for a while. Suddenly, he looked at Li Mu and asked, "Are you close to Mr. Mei from the internal guards?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Not bad." Zhang Chun thought for a moment, then said, "Next time you see her, help me ask if the residence bestowed by His Majesty can be sold." Chapter 226. In fact, Li Mu had already investigated Lord Zhang's question. Other things bestowed by Her Majesty, such as silk and magic treasures, could be dealt with on their own, but not official residences. Official residences bestowed by Her Majesty or the Imperial Court could be modified, renovated, or even rebuilt, but they couldn't be sold. When officials left Chengdu, they had to return the deeds to the house and the land. In other words, whether it was Lord Zhang's 2-sectioned house or Li Mu's 5-sectioned house, they still belonged to the Empress and the Imperial Court. After hearing this, Zhang Chun sighed and said, "What a loss." Li Mu didn't want to discuss the mansion with him anymore. He asked, "What happened to Zhou Chu?" Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "Even if there are many people from the old party in the Ministry of Justice, I'm afraid they won't be so opposed to the Zhou family. The conflict between the old party and the new party is about the succession of the throne. Other than that, they're actually the same kind of people. They're all privileged people in the Great Zhou. Moreover, Her Majesty's surname is Zhou." Li Mu thought for a while and said, "If Her Majesty favors Zhou Chu, then I don't want to be a constable in Chengdu." Zhang Chun suddenly became alert and said, "Where do you want to go?" Li Mu said, "Back to Beijun. Maybe I'll enter the ancestral court of Fu Lu School." He came to Chengdu to win the love of the people, to obtain psychokinesis, and to obtain cultivation resources from the Empress. All of this was on the premise that Li Mu approved of the Empress. If the Empress's actions disappointed him, Li Mu would change his mind. Big love and small love were all love. Being in love with the woman he loved and cultivating both yin and yang could not only fulfill the 7 emotions, but also speed up his cultivation. Although his cultivation speed might not be as fast as hugging the Empress, at least he wouldn't be bullied. After hearing that Li Mu was going to the ancestral court of Fu Lu School, Zhang Chunming heaved a sigh of relief. After thinking for a while, he said, "Actually, I think that it's much better for you to enter the ancestral court of Fu Lu School than to be a servant in Luoyang. Why do you have to be so tired every day? Why don't you just resign? Do you know how to write a resignation letter? If not, I can help you." Zhang Chun was very active in urging Li Mu to resign. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Let's see how it goes, Zhou residents." The news of Zhou Chu's drunkenness and his execution by the Luoyang Yamen had already reached the Zhou mansion. Even the maids and servants of the Zhou mansion found it hard to believe. Before Her Majesty became the Empress, the Zhou family was one of the most prominent families in the Immortal's capital. It had been many years since something like this had happened to the Zhou family. After leaving the Luoyang Yamen hurried to the Zhou mansion and was led by the gatekeeper. After walking for a long time and passing through countless moon gates, he arrived at a courtyard in the Zhou mansion. There were many important people in the Zhou mansion and he was not qualified to meet most of them. Therefore he went directly to Zhou Chu's father, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works, Zhou Ting. As soon as he entered, Zhou Ting asked, "How did it go?" The Luoyang Yamen gritted his teeth and said, "That damn Zhang Chun. He's determined to go against you. I was too late. He's already submitted the verdict to the Ministry of Justice for review. I'm afraid we can't get around them." Zhou Ting's face darkened. He said coldly, "Zhang Chun. I'll remember this name." He glanced at the Luoyang Yamen and said, "All right, you may leave." After the Luoyang Yamen left, Zhou Ting walked out of the room and disappeared under the sunlight. Ministry of Justice. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, was flipping through a case file. At a certain moment, he closed the file in his hand and glanced at the door. The 2 doors slowly closed. He looked at the empty space opposite him and said, "Aren't you afraid of being criticized for coming to the Ministry of Justice, Lord Zhou?" Zhou Ting's figure appeared on the chair opposite him. Zhou Ting picked up the teacup on the table and drank the tea in one gulp. He said, "If you didn't know I was coming, who did you make this tea for?" The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice smiled and asked, "What do you think of the tea?" Zhou Ting frowned and said, "I'm not here to drink tea. I only want to ask you one thing. What do you want me to do for you to let my son go?" The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice shook his head and said, "Your son was drunk and rode a horse. After killing a commoner, he tried to escape and resisted arrest. His actions were terrible. The Luoyang Yamen sentenced him to death. It's reasonable." Zhou Ting looked him in the eye and said, "You should know that I have many ways to protect him. Going through the Ministry of Justice is the simplest way. I don't want trouble, but I'm not afraid of trouble either. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice thought for a while and said, we want the position of county lieutenant of Nanyang County. Oh. Zhou Ting did not hesitate and said angrily, don't you think you're asking for too much? The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice shook his head and smiled. He said, does Lord Zhou think that your son's life is not worth the position of county lieutenant of Nanyang County? Zhou Ting was silent for a while and said, this is not something I can decide. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice said, then let someone who can make the decision talk. Zhou Ting looked at him and his figure gradually faded. After 15 minutes, he reappeared on the chair opposite the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice. He said calmly, the position of county lieutenant of Nanyang County is yours. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice threw the file aside and said, although he can avoid execution, his actions are too terrible. Even if the victim's family forgives him, he can still be locked up for a few years for killing, fleeing, resisting arrest and resisting arrest. There shouldn't be a problem for him to hide outside and return to the Luoyang County after a few years, right? Zhou Ting said, no. Before the Substitution Silver Act was abolished, this case was just a little troublesome and could be settled with silver. However, now that the Substitution Silver Act was abolished, it was not easy for anyone to settle a murder case in the Luoyang County with simple methods. He glanced at the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice again and his figure faded away. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, had the same surname as him, but he firmly supported the old faction of the Xiao family and was the political enemy of the Zhou family. However, sometimes the most trustworthy person was the enemy. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice looked at the file sent by the Luoyang County government and shook his head. He said softly, what will you do? The Luoyang County government. Li Mu was still patrolling outside when he received a message from Wang Wu. The Ministry of Justice had rejected Lord Zhang's request to be executed. The government had its reasons to execute him, but the Ministry of Justice also had their reasons to reject it. The reason given by the government was that Zhou Ting was drunk and riding a horse, causing death. Later he attempted to flee and resisted arrest. His actions were too terrible and he should be sentenced to death for manslaughter. The Ministry of Justice did not approve it because the Zhou family had compensated the deceased's family with a large sum of money and the old man's family had written a letter of forgiveness. Under normal circumstances, for manslaughter and unintentional murder, as long as the family was forgiven, the government would give a lighter sentence. Once Zhou Ting was forgiven by the deceased's family, he would be able to escape death. This was in accordance with the law, even in Li Mu's later life. Li Mu returned to the government office. Zhang Chun shook his head and said, there's nothing we can do. The deceased's family was not well off. The Zhou family compensated them with a large sum of money, enough for them to live the rest of their lives without worry. The deceased's family wrote a letter of forgiveness and the Ministry of Justice decided to give a lighter sentence. Zhou Ting will be sent to Jianghu County to serve 3 years of hard labor. Wang Wu sighed and added, Jianghu County, they are all members of the new party. Zhou Chu just changed his place to be happy. Jianghu County is far away from Chengdu. Zhou Chu will be more comfortable in Jianghu County than in Chengdu. Deputy Constable Sun walked in and said to Li Mu, Constable Li, there's someone outside who wants to see you. Li Mu walked to the entrance of the government office and saw a middle-aged couple leading a boy and a girl around 7 or 8 years old. Li Mu looked at them and asked, who are you? The middle-aged couple knelt on the ground. The man looked ashamed and said, Constable Li, we're not here for the money. You can't beat the Zhou family. Luoyang can live without us but it can't live without you. Please forgive us. As soon as the middle-aged man spoke, Li Mu knew who they were. They were the old man's family. After receiving the Zhou family's money and writing a letter of forgiveness, Zhou Ting's sentence was changed from death to exile. Li Mu helped them up and said, I know you didn't do anything wrong. My condolences. He could tell that the couple was sincere and there was no falsehood in their words. Although Li Mu also hoped that people like Zhou Ting could be executed as soon as possible to prevent him from harming the people in the future, for this family, the dead could not be brought back to life. The current ending was the best ending. Li Mu was already very gratified that they were thinking of him. After sending the couple off, Li Mu returned to the government office. Zhang Chun sighed and said, don't take it too hard. You've already done a lot for Luoyang and the people of the Great Zhou. If the money for substitution is not abolished, you'll still see him often in Luoyang in the future. An hour later, people from the Ministry of Justice came and took Zhou Ting away from the government office. The outside of the government office was filled with onlookers. Their expressions were indignant. They wanted Zhou Ting to die, but there was nothing they could do. After staying in the prison for a few hours, Zhou Ting walked out of the government office again. When he walked in front of Li Mu, he looked at him with a smile and said, "I told you it's useless." Li Mu's expression was calm as he looked at him indifferently. "We'll meet again. Perhaps it won't take 3 years. At that time, I hope you'll still be here." The smile on Zhou Ting's face gradually disappeared. He looked at Li Mu and said, "You're the first person to let me know what the prison in Luoyang is like. It's not easy to meet such an interesting person. I really don't want to leave now." With that, he left. The 2 middle-aged men who went to prison with him also followed behind him. Zhou Ting took a few steps, then turned back and said to Li Mu, "By the way, after I leave, you have to pay more attention to that old man's family. You have to move out quickly. I heard that they live outside the city. Their house is made of straw mixed with mud. Who knows when it will collapse? They have to be careful on the road. There are many people riding horses outside. It won't be good if 1 or 2 people are killed." When he said this, he did not lower his voice. The onlookers widened their eyes. Extreme anger appeared on their faces. A threat. This was a naked threat. This person was actually so daring. He had just killed that innocent old man with his horse. Now he was threatening their family. Was there no law in Luoyang? Li Mu clenched his fists, then quickly relaxed them. Zhou Ting was very satisfied with his reaction. He smiled at Li Mu and said, "I'm just reminding you. I didn't do anything. You have to have evidence before you do anything. Don't accuse a good person." "Ah," Li Mu said, "whatever man does, God is watching. God is watching from above." Zhou Ting smiled disdainfully and said, "God? After so many years, I really want to see what God looks like. If you have the ability, let them come down." Li Mu had one hand in his sleeve. He pointed to the sky and raised his head. He shouted, "Damn God, if you have eyes, you shouldn't let good people be wronged. You shouldn't let such evil people harm the world." Zhou Ting sneered. When he looked up, his expression suddenly changed. Boom. A purple thunderbolt struck down from above. Puff. The purple thunderbolt struck Zhou Ting's head. A strange sound came from his chest. A Fulu card turned into ashes. Boom. After the first thunderbolt, another purple thunderbolt struck Zhou Ting's head. He was still unscathed, but the green brick under his feet exploded with a loud bang. At the same time, a substitute talisman in his sleeve burned. Boom. The third thunderbolt struck. A jade pendant on Zhou Ting's chest turned into dust. Boom. The fourth thunderbolt struck. Zhou Ting's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with extreme fear. He cried out in shock, "No!" This purple lightning completely engulfed his entire body. In the blink of an eye, only a charred pit was left. Zhou Ting's figure had completely disappeared. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. The noisy street suddenly became quiet. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Gulp. It was unknown who was the first to swallow a mouthful of saliva. Whoosh. Everyone turned to look at Li Mu in unison, including the 2 divine ability protectors around him. Li Mu was still pointing to the sky. He quietly removed the handprint in his sleeve. He raised his hands and said, "Don't look at me. It has nothing to do with me. You don't think that a third realm cultivator like me can release the heavenly thunder of purple cloud, do you?" Chapter 227. The street in front of the government office was silent. The commoners looked at the charred pit on the street, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Zhou Quan had already disappeared, but the scene of him being struck to ashes by the divine lightning from the heavens was still replaying in everyone's minds. The 2 supernatural power cultivators looked at the scene in a daze, their bodies turning cold. The purple heavenly thunder was dozens of times stronger than ordinary thunder techniques. It was a high-level thunder technique that could only be released by creation realm cultivators. Even if Zhou Chu had several life-saving trump cards, he could not withstand the continuous lightning from the heavens. The purple heavenly thunder had the power of the 5th realm. Even they could not withstand it. They could only watch as Zhou Chu turned to ashes, his soul dispersing under the purple heavenly thunder. As soon as the last thunder subsided, a figure dashed out of the divine capital office. Zhang Chun's expression changed. He asked, "Purple heavenly thunder? Who attracted the purple heavenly thunder?" Li Mu shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Zhang Chun looked around and asked, "Where's Zhou Chu?" As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and said angrily, How dare you? Zhou Chu is a sinner. He was taken away as soon as he was released from the government office. Does the Zhou family have no regard for the law? Li Mu pointed at the pit on the ground and said, Zhou Chu is there. Zhang Chun stared blankly at the charred pit on the ground. Li Mu explained, Zhou Chu killed the old man. After he was released from prison, not only did he not repent, he even held a grudge. He threatened the victim's family in front of so many citizens and was disrespectful to the heavens. Finally, he angered the heavens and sent down several purple heavenly thunders. He died from the wrath of the heavens. Everyone here can testify. Zhang Chun said in shock, Zhou Chu is dead? Struck to death by lightning? The onlookers finally came to their senses and spoke. The heavens have eyes, the heavens have eyes. The heavens are watching what people do. Even the heavens can't stand his evil deeds. Good strike, good strike. Even the heavens are upholding justice for us citizens. Good has its reward, evil has its retribution. The heavens are watching from above. Zhou Chu's actions just now had aroused the anger of the people. The people had seen him die from the wrath of the heavens with their own eyes. The joy in their hearts was indescribable. The guard with the broken arm came to his senses and pointed at Li Mu angrily saying, It's you, it must be you, you used a scheme to kill the young master. Li Mu looked at him and said, You have to have evidence before you speak. If I could use the heavenly thunder of purple cloud, I would have destroyed you who are worse than animals long ago. Why would I wait until now? The guard said, Fulu, you must have used Fulu. Li Mu said coldly, Did you see me use Fulu just now? It was impossible for him to use the heavenly thunder talisman in front of everyone. The guard changed his words again, Taoist technique, you used Taoist technique. Li Mu mocked, It can make a cultivator of the third realm use the fifth realm heavenly thunder of purple cloud. If I knew this Taoist technique, the 4 sects and 6 schools of Buddhism and Taoism would have to worship me. Why would I need to stay in Luoyang and be bullied by animals like you? The guard opened his mouth and was speechless. No matter what the cause of the young master's death was, someone had to bear the responsibility. If it was not this constable of the Luoyang government, it would be them. As guards they would not live long if they let the young master die. He clenched his teeth and crushed the jade talisman in his hand. The moment the jade talisman was crushed, a strong aura shot up from the Ministry of Works. A figure stepped on the air and appeared at the entrance of the Luoyang government in an instant. Zhou Ting looked at the two and asked, What is it, where is the young master? The one-armed guard lowered his head and said in fear, The young master was killed. Zhou Ting's expression changed. What, my son is dead? The one-armed guard pointed at Li Mu and said, Sir, this person killed the young master. He was furious. Where is his body, where is his soul? The guard said with a trembling voice, The young master's soul has dissipated. Zhou Ting took a few steps back. As a fifth realm cultivator he could not control his emotions. His body was trembling slightly. He grabbed the guard by the neck and lifted him up. He clenched his teeth and said, What did you say, say it again? The one-armed guard's eyes were wide open. He said with difficulty, The young master died under the heavenly thunder of purple cloud. Zhou Ting let go of his hand and threw him aside. He looked at Li Mu with a murderous gaze. Zhang Chun said hurriedly, Sir, Zhou Ting died under the wrath of the heavens. So many people saw it with their own eyes. You can't blame anyone else. Zhou Ting looked at the charred pit under his feet. He closed his eyes and his lips trembled slightly. No one could hear what he said clearly. However, his cold and emotionless voice sounded in the ears of the two guards. Kill this person, and I will ensure that your primordial spirits are not destroyed. The two guards looked at each other. Killing an official meant death. If the young master died, they would also die if they went back. Only by obeying the Zhou family would they have a sliver of hope. In the next moment, one of them drew his sword and slashed at Li Mu without hesitation. The other person's artifact had long been broken by Li Mu. He clenched a fist with one hand. His fist was suffused with white light. He punched at Li Mu's chest. Return my young master's life. The sword light cut through the air. The fist created a sonic boom. It went straight for Li Mu's chest. Their speed was extremely fast, but there was someone who was even faster than them. Before the two of them attacked, Zhang Chun had already taken a step forward and blocked in front of Li Mu. After being blocked by Zhang Chun, the two of them paused slightly. They were about to push Zhang Chun back when they suddenly lowered their heads and looked at their chests. 2 small golden swords pierced through their chests. Their hearts were pierced. The two of them died instantly. Just as their primordial spirits escaped, the two small swords came back and pierced into their primordial spirits. They exploded immediately. Their primordial spirits were completely destroyed by the self-destruction of the golden sword shadows. In Li Mu's hand, the last two sword talismans turned into ashes. He looked at Zhou Ting's father and said coldly, "Those who assassinate an official will be killed on the spot." "You are the constable of the divine capital?" Zhou Ting looked at him. His facial muscles trembled as he asked, "My son died because of you?" Li Mu felt the emotions of the people around him. He knew that this was a rare opportunity to gain their trust. He looked straight into Zhou Ting's eyes and said, "Zhou Ting died because of the wrath of heaven. Even if heaven doesn't kill him, I will kill him. Then you can go to hell." With his only son dead, Zhou Ting had lost his last bit of rationality. A giant golden palm condensed behind him and slapped down on Li Mu's head. "How dare you? How dare you hurt people in the divine capital?" Zhang Chun's face was dark. He raised his hand and slapped out. The giant golden palm turned into specks of light and dissipated in the air. Zhou Ting's eyes narrowed. He looked at Zhang Chun with some caution. At this moment, Zhang Chun suddenly realized something. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a few steps back. He sat on the ground and pointed at Zhou Ting. He cursed, "You Zhou! How dare you try to murder an official of the imperial court in broad daylight? Do you have no respect for the law? Do you have no respect for His Majesty?" Li Mu helped Zhang Chun up. With a flip of his hand, a porcelain bottle appeared in his palm. He poured out a pill from the bottle and handed it to Zhang Chun. He said, "This is a healing pill. Lord Zhang, please take it." Zhang Chun swallowed the pill and smacked his lips. He looked at Li Mu and said, "That palm strike contained decades of experience. I'm seriously injured. This pill is good. Do you have more?" Li Mu gave him the entire bottle. He still had a few bottles of such pills. A figure was rushing over from afar. Soon Li Mu sensed a familiar aura. Mr. Mei appeared beside Li Mu. He looked at the corpses of the two guards on the ground, then at Zhou Ting and Zhang Chun. He asked in a low voice, "What happened?" Zhang Chun pointed at Zhou Ting with a mournful expression. He said, "Mr. Mei, you have to help me. This man tried to murder an official of the imperial court. He didn't care about the law at all. He didn't care about Her Majesty at all." Mr. Mei looked at Zhou Ting and asked sternly, "Lord Zhou, is this true?" The inner guards obeyed the empress. Even Zhou Ting didn't dare to be arrogant in front of the inner guards. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "This man killed my son. I wanted to avenge him. Zhang Chun came to me voluntarily. I didn't try to murder an official of the imperial court." Mr. Mei was shocked when he heard the first half of the sentence. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Zhou Ting is dead. Did you kill him?" Li Mu hurriedly said, "Lord Mei, you can't simply say that. Just now these commoners were all here. A few hundred pairs of eyes were watching. Ask them, have I ever touched a single strand of hair?" Hearing this, many people defended Li Mu. "It has nothing to do with Constable Li. Zhou Ting was punished by the heavens. We all saw it. He was disrespectful to the heavens. That's why the heavens struck him with lightning. Everyone saw it. He didn't die in one strike. He was struck several times. I counted. He was struck 4 times. The 4th time he was struck by lightning. There wasn't even a speck of dust left. Constable Li must have woken up the heavens with his scolding. The heavens couldn't bear to see Zhou Ting continue to do evil, so they took him in." Mr. Mei looked at the generous crowd and found it hard to believe. The way of heaven was mysterious. No one knew or grasped the rules. If one did evil, they would be punished by the heavens. How many people were struck to death in Luoyang every day? However, with Li Mu's presence, this matter had a trace of credibility. After all, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to him. She moved her lips and looked at Li Mu. She asked, "Did Zhou Ting really die because of the heavens?" Li Mu nodded and said, "We all saw with our own eyes that after Zhou Ting was released from prison, he didn't repent. Instead, he threatened the victim's family in front of so many people. Later, he was disrespectful to the heavens and insulted them. Perhaps the heavens couldn't stand such a beast, so they struck him with lightning. Not long ago there was a woman who died unjustly in Yang County. She was wronged and died because of the injustice. After she died, she became an evil spirit. Today Zhou Ting did all kinds of evil deeds and died because of the wrath of the heavens." He looked at the charred pit on the ground and sighed. "Good and evil will be rewarded. The heavens are reincarnated. If you don't believe it, look up and see who the heavens forgive." Chapter 228. Zhou Ting clenched his fists and veins popped out on his forehead. However, in front of Mr. Mei, he could only suppress the pain of losing his son and his anger towards Li Mu and Zhang Chun. He didn't believe in divine punishment at all. The way of heaven was mysterious, and the so-called divine punishment was just an excuse used by foolish people to comfort themselves. The evil spirit incident in Yang County wasn't caused by her injustice, but by the truth. Zhou Chu's death was definitely not due to divine punishment. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Mr. Mei and said, "Mr. Mei, do you also believe in divine punishment?" Mr. Mei wasn't sure. He glanced at Li Mu and said, "No matter what, the heavenly thunder of purple cloud isn't something that can be attracted by cultivators in the assembled God state. This has nothing to do with Li Mu. We'll only know the details after the investigation." Many commoners and officials heard the thunder in broad daylight in the Luoyang city. 2 constables from the Ministry of Justice arrived late. When they saw the charred pit, 2 corpses, and Zhou Ting whose veins were popping out on his forehead, they knew they couldn't get involved. They were about to leave when Zhou Ting suddenly said, "This case involves the Luoyang government. They should avoid arousing suspicion and hand it over to the Ministry of Justice for investigation." The 2 constables from the Ministry of Justice stopped in their tracks. Their faces fell completely. One of the constables gritted his teeth and walked forward. He asked, "What happened here? Who killed these 2? The 2 corpses on the ground were the most eye-catching things. The constables recognized them as Zhou Chu's guards. Both of them died on the street, but they didn't know where Zhou Chu went. Li Mu said, "These 2 tried to assassinate me. I've killed them in front of everyone. The people around can testify. I can testify that these 2 tried to kill Constable Li. They deserve to die. They did evil with Zhou Chu all day long. They should have died long ago. Why didn't those thunderbolts kill them too?" With the people around as witnesses, it was easy to cover up what happened to the 2 guards. The constable's job was to chase after criminals and bandits. Their lives were easily threatened when faced with the heretical cultivation of demonic ghosts. In the case of a fatal crisis, they had the right to kill the villains who threatened their lives on the spot. As a constable, he could empathize with Li Mu. He understood Li Mu's actions very well. He skipped over this matter and asked again, "What about those thunderbolts just now?" One of the commoners said, "Zhou Chu committed all kinds of evil and was disrespectful to the heavens. The heavens sent down a few bolts of lightning and struck him to death." That constable was stunned on the spot. Giving Zhou Ting a glance, he said in disbelief, "Young Master Zhou was struck to death by lightning?" The development of the matter had greatly exceeded his expectations. This was no longer a matter that the 2 of them could handle. The constable hurriedly said, "This case is of great importance. It must be decided by the Ministry of Justice. Those related to this case, please follow us back to the Ministry of Justice for trial." Li Mu wasn't directly related to Zhou Chu's death, but it was also indirectly related. Naturally, he had to make a trip to the Ministry of Justice. Zhang Chun swallowed a pill and said, "I'll go with you. I'll also go to the Ministry of Justice to demand an explanation for Lord Zhou's palm strike just now." Zhou Ting's face darkened. The Minister of God's capital, Zhang Chun, was as strong as him, but he pretended to be injured by him. How shameless! We'll go with Constable Li too. We'll testify for him. Go to the heavens and demand justice if you can. Constable Li is innocent. Everyone, let's go to the Ministry of Justice and support Constable Li. The commoners were furious. They followed Li Mu to the Ministry of Justice. At the entrance of the Ministry of Justice, the bailiff guarding the door was scared out of his wits when he saw this scene. He thought that the people in God's capital were rebelling and attacking the Ministry of Justice. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the people at the front were 2 of his colleagues from the Ministry of Justice. "What's going on? Why did you bring so many people here?" The bailiff walked forward and said, "Quick, get the minister and the assistant minister here. Something big has happened." The minister and assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice were not here. The person in charge of the Ministry of Justice was the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice was shocked when he heard this. "What? Zhou Chu is dead? Wasn't he sentenced to prison?" The bailiff said, "Minister, you'll know when you go out." In the court of the Ministry of Justice, the Minister of Justice spent 15 minutes before he finally learned the truth from the commoners present. After Zhou Chu was sentenced to exile, he threatened the family of the victim in front of Li Mu and the commoners. His attitude was extremely arrogant. Li Mu could not tolerate this evil. He pointed to the heavens and cursed, hoping that the heavens would get rid of this evil for the people. Then the heavens sent down several lightning bolts and struck Zhou Chu until his soul was scattered. If not for all the witnesses saying this, the Minister of Justice would have thought that he was listening to a story. If the heavens really had eyes and would punish the evil of the world, then what was the use of the Ministry of Justice? Logically speaking, with the enmity between him and Li Mu, the director of the Ministry of Justice would definitely do his best to give Li Mu an unforgettable experience in the Ministry of Justice since Li Mu had finally fallen into his hands. But he did not dare. The facts had already proven that the person standing in front of the court was a reckless young man who was not afraid of anything. He had just attracted the wrath of the heavens and killed an evil person. If he was angered and he continued to point to the heavens and curse, the next person to be struck by lightning might be the Minister of Justice himself. As the Minister of Justice, he had handed down countless cases. This was the first time he had encountered such a strange and tricky case. It was impossible to say that Zhou Chu's death had nothing to do with Li Mu. But to say that he had something to do with it, he had to admit that the heavens could hear his pleas and struck Zhou Chu to death according to his wishes. In this case, what crime should he pin on Li Mu? Hiring someone to kill someone? Hiring the heavens to kill Zhou Chu, the employer was caught. Should they also arrest the murderer? The problem was, how would the Ministry of Justice arrest the heavens? As a cultivator, he did not even dare to have such disrespectful thoughts towards the heavens. After all, not everyone had the guts of Li Mu. The Minister of Justice looked at Zhou Ting and said, "The idea of the wrath of the heavens is ridiculous. Is there a possibility that the person who killed your son was actually a fifth-level master who was hiding in the dark?" He did not like Zhou Chu's actions but did not dare to act openly. So he took the opportunity when Li Mu was cursing the heavens to kill your son with the heavenly thunder of purple clouds, eliminating evil for the sake of the people. Zhou Ting's son had just died. The Minister of Justice originally wanted to choose his words carefully, but in the end, driven by his conscience, he said this word. Although he had done many evil things in the past few years against his conscience, he could be considered a good person compared to Zhou Chu. He killed an innocent person with his horse. The Zhou family had paid a great price to get Zhou Chu out of prison. But not only did he not restrain himself, he became even worse. As soon as he was released from prison, he threatened the family of the victim he killed in front of the constable of the fairy's capital. Was this something a human could do? If he had a shred of humanity left, he would not have done such a thing. It was obvious that the Zhou family had been too prominent in the fairy's capital in the past 3 years. As a result, Zhou Chu had relied on the Zhou family and was so arrogant that he had lost his humanity. Zhou Ting's face darkened. He said, "A fifth-level master is just your guess. No matter what, Li Mu is related to my son's death. How will the Ministry of Justice deal with him?" When the Minister of Justice heard this, he was already a little angry. The Ministry of Justice did not rely on the new party. The Zhou family was powerful, but this was the Ministry of Justice. What right did he have to speak to him like this? Taking a step back, how would the Ministry of Justice deal with Li Mu? If they dealt with Li Mu, it would mean that they approved of him using the heavens to kill someone. If they dealt with the person who hired the murderer, they could not let the murderer go unpunished, right? How would they deal with the heavens? What kind of person would have the guts to judge the heavens? The Minister of Justice said, "The heavenly wrath still needs to be investigated." Zhou Ting said darkly, "The heavenly wrath is just an excuse they made up. My son's death must have something to do with him. If the Ministry of Justice takes him into custody and interrogates him, we'll definitely be able to get something out of him." The Minister of Justice said with a cold expression, "Lord Zhou, are you teaching me how to do things?" At this moment, Zhang Chun stepped forward and said angrily, "Lord Zhou, your son's death is unforgivable. However, as an official of the Imperial Court, you actually tried to kill me and the Imperial Court's official. How will you deal with this?" He sat cross-legged in the court and said coldly, "If the Ministry of Justice can't give me a satisfactory explanation today, I won't leave." Lord Zhang, who had always been as timid as a mouse, suddenly became unyielding and dared to fall out with the Zhou family. Li Mu only needed to think for a moment to figure out Lord Zhang's motive. Lord Zhang was determined to make a big deal out of this and achieve his goal of being transferred out of the fairy's capital. At this time he could not be left to fight alone. Making a big deal out of this matter would be greatly beneficial to Li Mu. As long as they were in the right, the bigger the matter, the better it would be for them. At most, they would resign and go to Mount Baiyun to live together with Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. Li Mu stepped forward and pointed at Zhou Ting. He said sternly, "You invert right and wrong and you can't differentiate between right and wrong. No wonder you taught such a beast." He kills people everywhere and he doesn't repent. He's waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Everyone knows that he's a beast. It's satisfying that he died under the heavenly wrath. His voice was loud and clear. It spread to the ears of everyone in the court and outside the court. The people were in high spirits and the psyche power in their bodies surged. They looked at Li Mushi in the hall, and some kind of colorless emotion surged in their bodies. Countless officials in the Ministry of Justice were stunned for a moment when they heard that. Then they felt a surge of pride in their hearts. Regardless of their position, to be able to say such words in front of the Zhou family, even if he was their enemy, was worthy of their respect. This was how a man should be. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice walked to the entrance of the Ministry of Justice and stopped. He looked at the court and reminisced. The Minister of Justice asked, "Assistant Minister Zhou, what's wrong?" The assistant minister looked forward and said, "He looks like an old friend of mine." The Minister of Justice's eyes flickered. He had been an official for many years, but he had only seen the scene in the Ministry of Justice twice. Coincidentally, the mastermind of both incidents was here. In the court, the muscles on Zhou Ting's face twitched and the veins on his forehead throbbed. He said sternly, "Who do you think you are? How dare you insult me?" Li Mu looked straight at him and said coldly, "I've cursed the heavens above and the earth below. I've cursed all the injustices in the world. I'm not afraid of the heavens and earth. Who do you think you are?" Chapter 229. The officials of the Ministry of Justice stood at the door of the guardroom and eavesdropped on the commotion in the court. Ever since Li Mu came to the divine capital, they had seen too many firsts in the Ministry of Justice. The constable of the divine capital made the director of the Ministry of Justice speechless for the first time in the Ministry of Justice's territory. It was also the first time someone scolded an official of the imperial court and an important figure of the Zhou family in the Ministry of Justice's court. Li Mu seemed to have a natural aura around him, a fearless aura. Li Mu's saliva flew everywhere in the court, almost landing on Zhou Ting's face. A crooked stick would have a crooked shadow. Seeing Zhou Ting's face, Li Mu didn't find Zhou Ting's actions strange. He didn't care about his position in the first place and he wasn't afraid of the Zhou family. He purposely played along with Lord Zhang and blew up the matter to find out the Empress's attitude. While Zhou Ting was fuming with rage, two figures walked in from outside. The director of the Ministry of Justice heaved a sigh of relief when he saw them. He quickly walked over and said, "Lord Minister, Lord Assistant Minister, you're finally back. This case is too complicated and I don't know how to judge it." The Minister of Justice said to Zhou Ting, "Lord Zhou, I'm deeply sorry that you lost your beloved son. The Ministry of Justice will investigate this case immediately, and will hand it over to His Majesty to make a decision tomorrow morning. Lord Zhou, do you have any objections?" Zhou Ting knew that he couldn't influence the Ministry of Justice, but he could say a few words to His Majesty. He said with a dark face, "I hope the Ministry of Justice can investigate this case impartially." The Minister of Justice said, "Of course." He looked at Zhang Chun and Li Mu and said, "This case involves a lot of things. You two can return to the Yamen first and wait outside the palace tomorrow. I'm afraid His Majesty will summon you at any time." Zhou Ting's death wasn't directly related to Li Mu, so the Ministry of Justice couldn't detain him. He and Zhang Chun walked out of the Ministry of Justice and were surrounded by commoners. "Constable Li, how did it go? What did the Ministry of Justice say?" "Zhou Ting's death was his own fault. The Ministry of Justice didn't blame you, did they?" Faced with the concern of the people, Li Mu smiled and said, "Tomorrow the Ministry of Justice will present this case to His Majesty and let His Majesty decide. I believe that His Majesty will give me justice. We're all with Constable Li. I suggest that everyone write a letter to plead for Constable Li." "I agree. The silk used to sign the book of 10,000 people will be provided by Splendid Workshop." At this moment, Li Mu sensed from the people around him. Other than psychic power, he also sensed emotions that were different from before. This emotion was colorless, and it was the last emotion that he lacked among the 7 emotions. Love originated from the love and respect of the people. The people of Luoyang finally trusted and accepted him after he cursed and swore at the sky and was struck by lightning. Li Mu walked from the Ministry of Justice to the government office. The love he absorbed from thousands of people was enough for him to condense the 5th spirit, non-poison. In the small residence of the government office, Xiao Bai sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate. She did not know what was going on. Li Mu walked into the room, got onto the bed and sat cross-legged opposite her. He formed a seal with his hands and said, 9 cycles of white qi, control the evil spirits, heavenly beasts guard the door, delicate girls guard the door, 7 spirits and softness are at peace with me, do not act rashly, look at the source of form. Non-poison, condense. His mana was no longer the same as before. It was extremely easy for him to condense the spirit and follow the spirit. After Li Mu had completely refined the love, Li Mu could clearly feel that there were some changes in his body. His mana had also increased slightly. However, compared to the increase in his mana, what he felt most was the feeling of completion that came from within his body. After condensing the love, Li Mu acutely sensed that there was a trace of love beside him. He opened his eyes and saw Xiao Bai sitting in front of him. She was holding her chin with both hands and looking at him in a daze. Her gaze was so pure and her small face was so delicate. The way she looked at Li Mu with all her attention made his heart tremble slightly. Since the second time she met Li Mu, she had never changed her mind about giving herself to him. After seeing Lu Hanyin, she was worried that Lu Hanyin would be dissatisfied, so she hid this thought. Li Mu had always thought that as a member of the Heavenly Fox clan, she stayed by his side only to repay his kindness. He did not expect that she would have the same feelings for Li Mu as Lu Hanyin. When Xiao Bai saw Li Mu open his eyes, the corners of her mouth immediately curled up. She said sweetly, "Benefactor, you're awake?" Li Mu patted her head and said, "Let's go home, the Ministry of Justice." Zhang Chun and Li Mu returned to the Yamen first, but Zhou Ting did not leave. He persuaded his family to make a deal with the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice with his position as the Nanyang Commandery Officer. He listened to his arrangements and gave the old man's family a large sum of money for them to write a letter of understanding. Through the Ministry of Justice, he reversed the sentence of the Luoyang Yamen and changed Zhou Chu's sentence from death to imprisonment. However, all of this was in vain. His son was still dead in the end. When only Zhou Ting and the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice were left in the court, the Assistant Minister glanced at him and said, "I am also very regretful about your son's death, but I have already done what I promised you. Our transaction has been completed. The following matters have nothing to do with me." Zhou Ting's eyes were bloodshot after experiencing the pain of losing his son. He gritted his teeth and said, "That matter is already in the past. There is no need to mention it again. I only want Li Mu to die now." Regardless of whether Zhou Chu's death was caused by Li Mu or someone else created the wrath of heaven to deceive the world, Zhou Ting could not tolerate Li Mu continuing to live in this world. Being pointed at and scolded in the court of the Ministry of Justice, he and the Zhou family had lost all face. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice said, "I'm afraid it won't be that easy to kill Li Mu. He is now affecting the people of the Luoyang. Moreover, your son's actions have indeed incurred the wrath of the heavens. His Majesty will not let him die, nor will your Zhou family unless he killed Zhou Chu. However, he clearly does not have the ability to kill Zhou Chu. If you want to avenge your son, you can only stab the heavens." A moment later, Zhou Ting walked out of the Ministry of Justice aggressively. In order to settle this matter, the Zhou family had paid a heavy price. However, in the end, an important chess piece of the Zhou family in Nanyang Commandery was lost. His son was also lost. It could be said that he had lost both his son and his army. He wanted nothing more than to cut Li Mu into 1,000 pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, there was nothing he could do. As soon as he returned to the Zhou family, a servant came to invite him, saying that the master wanted to see him. Zhou Ting passed through a few doors and arrived at a study. He knocked on the door and a dignified voice said, "Come in." Zhou Ting walked into the study and said sorrowfully, "Big brother Chuer is dead?" In the study an imposing figure said, "I already know." The figure sighed and turned to look at him. He said, "I've already warned you to be strict with yourself and discipline your son well. However, you never listened and allowed him to do as he pleased in the Luoyang. That's why he has today's consequences." Zhou Ting said sorrowfully, "It's too late to say all this now. Chu is dead. His soul has dissipated. He doesn't even have the chance to become a ghost. I must catch Chuer's murderer and tear him to pieces." The figure was silent for a moment. He asked, "What did the Ministry of Justice say?" Zhou Ting gritted his teeth and said, "The Ministry of Justice suspects that a fifth realm powerhouse killed Chu under the guise of heavenly wrath." The figure calculated with his fingers and shook his head. "No one else was involved in Chuer's death. It's indeed related to that constable." Zhou Ting's eyes widened. Although he really wanted Li Mu to die, he did not think that Zhou Chu's death was caused by Li Mu. He was just a third realm constable and did not have that kind of ability. However, Big Brother had the cultivation of Dongxian. He could read the stars and predict heavenly secrets. It was impossible for him to be wrong. Zhou Ting said furiously, "It's really him. How did he kill Chuer?" The figure shook his head and said, "Heavenly secrets are hard to predict. It's already the limit for him to be able to predict that Chuer's death is related to him." Zhou Ting said, "I'll beg the Dean and His Majesty. They'll definitely be able to calculate everything." The figure shook his head and said, "Although the Dean and His Majesty have high cultivation, they can't calculate much more than me. It's better not to disturb them. It's not difficult to find out how that constable killed Chu. As long as we use the soul assimilation technique on him, the truth will come to light." Zhou Ting thought about it and said in disbelief, "There are no traces of Fulu being used at the scene. There's also no such Dao technique. Could it really be?" The figure was silent for a moment. Then he said calmly, "If that's the case, you don't have to pursue this matter anymore." Zhou Ting was stunned. Then he said with a ferocious expression, "Am I going to die for nothing? If it's heavenly wrath, then it's the will of the heavens." The figure said, "The will of the heavens comes first. The Zhou family cannot lose their sense of righteousness. You must consider the big picture." Zhou Ting was silent for a long time. Then he said slowly, "I understand." Chapter 230. Zhou Mansion. As the most powerful family in the Great Zhou dynasty, the scale of the Zhou Mansion in the divine capital was even greater than that of the Xiao Mansion. The Zhou Mansion was more than 100 feet long from north to south and 50 feet wide from east to west. The mansion occupied a large area. The Zhou family was prosperous. The four brothers all held important positions in the imperial court. It was said in the divine capital that the Zhou family supported half of the imperial court in the Great Zhou. This was not an exaggeration. At this moment, in a courtyard in the Zhou Mansion, a middle-aged woman had fainted from crying after hearing the news of Zhou Chu's death. "Chu, my poor Chu, Her sorrowful cries penetrated the walls of the courtyard. The maids and servants who passed by all lowered their heads and hurried past. Zhou Chu's two sisters had already married out of the Zhou family. When they heard the news, they hurried back to console the woman. The woman cried until her tears ran dry. She grabbed Zhou Ting's hand and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. She gritted her teeth and said, "Master, the person who killed Chuer must be cut into 1,000 pieces. Then, his soul must be captured and burned by the nether fire day and night." Zhou Ting said coldly, "Don't worry. I will make him beg for death to comfort Chuer's soul in heaven." A young woman beside the woman raised her head and looked at Zhou Ting. She said, "Father, when I came here, I heard from my husband that this matter is not easy to deal with. It could easily incite a rebellion among the people. Why don't you go to the palace and beg my sister? Beg Her Majesty to uphold justice for my brother?" The other young woman beside her could not bear it. She opened her mouth several times, but in the end she sighed and did not say anything. Zhou Ting said, "Ever since we forced her to marry the former crown prince, Her Majesty has been holding a grudge against the Zhou family. In these 3 years she has deliberately distanced herself from the Zhou family. If I go to the palace and beg her, I'm afraid," the young woman who spoke first said, "no matter what, Chuer is still her family. No matter how cold-blooded she is, she won't ignore Chuer's death, right?" The woman gritted her teeth and said, "If she refuses to see you, ask Big Brother to see her. Although she is Her Majesty, will she refuse to see her own father?" Zhou Ting lowered his head and said, "Big Brother wants me to consider the big picture. It's impossible for him to interfere in this matter." The woman said angrily, the big picture, Chuana's life is already gone, and he still wants to take care of the big picture? This is also related to the Zhou family's face and dignity." "Shut up." Zhou Ting reprimanded her and said, "For this day, our Zhou family has waited for hundreds of years." The burden on Big Brother's shoulders is not something we can imagine. He concealed the sorrow in his eyes, straightened his collar and said, "I'll enter the palace first." The imperial palace. Zhou Ting stood in front of a palace and bowed. "This Zhou has an important matter to discuss with His Majesty. Miss Shangguan, please help me inform him." The young female official said, "I'm sorry, His Majesty had some enlightenment in cultivation today and went into seclusion early in the morning. If Lord Zhou has anything to say, we can talk about it tomorrow morning." Zhou Ting was silent for a while before saying, "Since that's the case, this official will return first." The young woman turned and walked through the palace into the garden behind it. Mr. Mei stood behind a figure and said, "Your Majesty, today in front of the godly capital government?" The Empress said, "I know." Her voice was very dignified, as if there was no emotion in it. Mr. Mei hesitated for a moment before saying, "Your Majesty, Zhou Chu's actions have already caused resentment among the people. Although he died because of Li Mu, his death can't be blamed on Li Mu. Otherwise, the people that your Majesty worked so hard to gather in the godly capital will scatter." The Empress looked ahead and said, "You seem to be very protective of Li Mu." Mr. Mei said, "I brought him here from the North County. After he came to the godly capital, everything he did was for the people and for your Majesty. I just feel that someone like him shouldn't suffer such injustice." The Empress asked, "Ali, what do you think?" The young female official thought for a while and said, "Although he sometimes speaks without thinking, he's a good person, a good official. The godly capital lacks people like him. Zhou Chu died from the heavenly thunder of purple cloud, and he's only a spirit condensation cultivator. Perhaps someone else is framing him and trying to take advantage of the situation." The Empress waved her sleeves and a clear image appeared in the air. In the image, Zhou Chu was arrogant. He threatened the family of the deceased, causing anger among the people. The young constable pointed at the sky and yelled, "Damn God, if you have eyes, you shouldn't let a good person be wronged and let evil people harm the world." As soon as he said that, 4 bolts of heavenly thunder of purple cloud fell from the sky. Zhou Chu blocked it 3 times, but he was still turned into ashes by the last bolt. The young female official and Mr. Mei saw this for the first time. They were shocked and couldn't recover for a long time. After a while, the young female official asked, "Your Majesty, can he really communicate with the heavenly Tao?" The Empress didn't answer. She only said, "You can leave now. This matter will be discussed in the imperial court tomorrow." After the 2 of them left, the Empress stood alone in the garden. Her temperament gradually changed. The aura of someone who looked down on the world and was high and mighty gradually disappeared. The person standing there seemed to be just an ordinary woman. Gradually, even her appearance began to change. Her originally elegant and beautiful face gradually became ordinary. The magnificent crown on her body also transformed into ordinary clothes. Her figure disappeared. At the same time, a woman in green appeared on the streets of the divine capital. The people passing by on the street didn't realize that there was a person in the crowd. The woman in green walked to a noodle stall. When the stall owner saw her, he smiled and said, "Miss, you haven't been here for a long time." The woman sat at the noodle stall and said, "A bowl of noodles." The owner wiped his hands and said, "Okay. Same old rules. Less chopped onions, no coriander." It was lunchtime. There were many diners at the noodle stall. These people were eating and talking at the same time. The scene of the lightning striking Zhou Chu today was so satisfying. Did you all see it? No. When I rushed over, it was already over. What? Were you there? I was lucky to be there. That place was struck by the purple lightning. Not even a speck of dust was left. Quick, tell us. This bowl of noodles is on me. Hearing that someone was paying for today's meal, the man added another plate of beef and began to tell the story. He described how lawless Zhou Chu was. He came out of the divine capital and threatened the family of the deceased. He described how Constable Li was so angry that he pointed at the sky. Heaven and earth felt his heart and sent down several lightning bolts to get rid of this evil in the divine capital. After he was taken away by the Ministry of Justice, he scolded Zhou Chu's father in the court. It was so satisfying. In the process of telling the story, he added some details and added some emotional embellishments. The crowd blushed as if they had been there and witnessed it with their own eyes. After he finished, he didn't forget to exclaim, "Constable Li is really a good constable. He really thinks about the people and stands on our side." Another customer sighed and said, "This time he has formed a deadly feud with the Zhou family. I wonder how the Zhou family will take revenge. Without Constable Li, will the divine capital return to the way it was before? It won't. We've already written a petition for the people. His Majesty will definitely seek justice for Constable Li." The woman in green finished her noodles and listened to the crowd's discussion for a while before she paid and left. Li residence. Li Mu and Xiao Bai bought some groceries on their way home. When they got home, they busied themselves in the kitchen. Compared to eating out, he enjoyed the feeling of cooking with her. In the past, Lu Hanyan was the one who cooked with him. After he came to the divine capital, Xiao Bai was the one by his side. Under Li Mu's guidance, Xiao Bai's culinary skills had reached a higher level. She was qualified to be Li Mu's assistant. After the meal, Li Mu told Xiao Bai that he was going to the palace tomorrow. At that time he would send her to the government office first. Xiao Bai asked worriedly, "Will Her Majesty blame benefactor?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't know." After all, his understanding of the Empress was mostly based on hearsay. Li Mu didn't know what kind of person she really was. However, he wasn't afraid of this case. With the clear heart technique, the soul-sucking technique was useless against him. As long as he didn't admit it, no one would be able to pin Chu Zhou's death directly on him. As for the soul-searching technique, it was extremely harmful and irreversible. Unless it was an extremely important matter that concerned the country, the imperial court wouldn't use it on an official. With the people's support, the imperial court would have to be careful no matter what they did to him. Xiao Bai said firmly, "I heard that Her Majesty is as beautiful as a fairy and has a kind heart. She won't wrong benefactor." Li Mu nodded and said, "I believe in Her Majesty." Not to mention her appearance, Li Mu was actually confident in other aspects of the Empress. He came to Chengdu because of the Empress. During this time he could be fearless and do whatever he wanted because he had the Empress' support. Women were always very concerned about the appearance of other women. Xiao Bai blinked and said, "How beautiful is she to be as beautiful as a fairy?" Li Mu rubbed her head and said, "What do you mean by as beautiful as a fairy?" "That's because Her Majesty is. No matter how ugly Her Majesty is, no one would dare to say that she's ugly. If you want to know what it means to be as beautiful as a fairy, go back to your room and look in the mirror." Xiao Bai was stunned for a while before she realized that Li Mu was praising her. She blushed and said uneasily, "I'll go wash the dishes." The girl was still a little shy. If it were Lu Hanyan, she might have already fallen into Li Mu's arms and made love to him. Li Mu returned to his room and sat down cross-legged. Not long after he felt sleepy. In his sleep, a fog suddenly appeared in front of his eyes and a woman's figure appeared. Seeing the familiar woman, Li Mu was stunned. Fear appeared on his face and he said in shock, "No way again." Chapter 231. Ever since that night when he was ravaged 8 times, this woman had never appeared in Li Mu's dreams again. This made him think that what had happened back then was merely a coincidence. Until now, this familiar figure had appeared in his dream once again. This made Li Mu realize that the possibility of that incident being a coincidence was infinitely close to zero. Li Mu did not leave the dream immediately. He needed to figure out what was going on. Li Mu looked at the woman from afar and asked, "Who are you?" The woman said indifferently, "You don't need to know who I am." Li Mu asked tentatively, "Are you my inner demon?" With Li Mu's knowledge, other than an inner demon, he could not think of any other possibility. Even Dongxian could not casually invade other people's dreams. This was something that even Venerable Qinhuan could not do. Inner demon? The woman looked at him and said slowly, "You can understand it that way." Li Mu said warily, "What do you want?" The woman said, "I was born because of you. Why don't you ask yourself what you want?" Her words made Li Mu no longer doubt her identity. Except for the consciousness born in his body, no one could easily enter his dreams. Many people interpreted the high-level inner demon as a second soul. According to Li Mu's understanding, it was more like a second personality. In the same body, several different consciousnesses were born. Their age, personality, and even gender could be different. Li Mu had seen this kind of setting countless times in suspense movies. Li Mu asked warily, "You want to devour my consciousness?" The woman shook her head and said, "Not interested." Li Mu said in surprise, "Then what do you want?" The woman looked at Li Mu and said, "You killed Zhou Chu." Li Mu looked at the woman. The consciousness of the inner demon and the main body did not affect each other, so she did not know what she was thinking or what she knew. However, the experiences of this body could not be hidden from her. Although the person in front of him was a woman, Li Mu knew very well that he was her and she was him. He had nothing to hide from himself. Li Mu asked, "Don't people who are worse than beasts deserve to die?" The woman said, "Director Zhou is from the Zhou family, and His Majesty's surname is also Zhou. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will be biased?" Li Mu looked at her and said, "You know a lot." The woman replied, "You are me and I am you. I know what you're thinking." Li Mu looked at her and asked, "Then tell me, what am I thinking now?" Li Mu thought, if the inner demon only appeared in dreams, if he had a wet dream, what would it look like in the eyes of the inner demon? Whoosh. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the shadow of a whip came at him. Li Mu quickly dodged and finally no longer doubted it. She even knew what he was thinking in his dreams. Other than his inner demon, what else could she be? The woman actually did not know what Li Mu was thinking. She only saw that his expression was strange, wretched and lustful. He could not be thinking of anything good, so she might as well whip him first. Li Mu looked at the woman and said, "Don't be impulsive. Hitting me is hitting you." The shadow of the whip slowly disappeared. The woman asked again, "Why are you doing this? What good is it for you?" Li Mu said, "You are me. You don't know why I'm doing this?" The woman did not speak. Li Mu guessed that she could only understand his thoughts in his dreams. He could not help but feel relieved. Worried that she would be angry and hang him up to beat him again, Li Mu said, "Because I am a bailiff. It is my duty to get rid of evil and bring justice to the people. Moreover, His Majesty has treated me with sincerity. I have to clean up the evil in Luoyang and unite the people to repay His Majesty." The woman looked at him indifferently and said, "Help her unite the people. It is unprecedented for a woman to be the emperor. It subverts ethics and disturbs the morals. How can a man become her pawn?" "Watch your words." Li Mu glared at her and said, "During His Majesty's reign he implemented benevolence and reformed the legal system. Many people have a better life. In contrast, during the time of the previous emperor, the 36 counties were filled with corrupt officials. Even Luoyang was a mess. If I don't help such a wise emperor, should I help a tyrant?" Li Mu was dissatisfied with the woman in front of him. As his other personality, she did not have the consciousness of the main personality. Li Mu felt ashamed for having such a personality. The woman was silent for a moment. She looked at Li Mu one last time and her figure slowly faded away. Li Mu pointed at her and said, "Don't go. I haven't finished talking." The woman's figure completely disappeared. Li Mu also woke up from his dream. He touched his head with a puzzled expression. This time he did not get beaten up. This time she was not as unreasonable as last time. He had read about the inner demons in books. They were all violent and murderous monsters. This was the first time Li Mu had heard of such a type. It was a dreamless night. Li Mu hugged Little White and slept until dawn. After sending her to the yamen, he waited outside the palace with Xianxia. The morning court had already begun. They did not know what was going on inside. Until now they had not been summoned. The two of them waited outside the palace in boredom. In the crepe myrtle palace, some of the courtiers were arguing in full swing. An official said angrily, "A country has its laws and a family has its rules. Zhou Chu has already been tried. Who gave him the right to execute on his own?" An imperial censor objected, "Zhou Chu was unrepentant and deranged. He angered the heavens and attracted the thunder fire. What does it have to do with others?" The official said, "Who attracted the heavenly thunder of purple cloud?" The imperial censor said, "Do you have evidence?" Some officials have already calculated that Zhou Chu's death is related to Li Mu. His death is also related to the heavens. Why don't you interrogate the heavens? You are twisting words and forcing logic. You are trying to accuse him. Whether it is true or not, we will know if we use the soul search on Li Mu. The court was divided into two factions regarding Zhou Chu's case. One faction believed that Li Mu, as an arrestor, did not have the right to execute anyone. His actions were considered intentional murder. The other faction believed that Zhou Chu died from the wrath of the heavens. The heavens were greater than everything. Even if the wrath of the heavens was caused by Li Mu, it should not be blamed on him. The two factions argued endlessly. The entire court was very noisy. Silence. The young female official's voice reached everyone's ears. Everyone shut their mouths. The court was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. No matter how they argued, the final verdict of this case still depended on the emperor. The moment the court quieted down, an image suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The scene was the scene in front of the Shindu Yamen. Zhou Chu, who was already dead, was in the picture. The officials were shocked. At this moment, they remembered that His Majesty was not only the emperor, but also an expert of the upper realm. He had already reached the peak of the profound light technique and was able to reenact the past. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the image. In the image, Zhou Chu's expression was arrogant. He said to Li Mu, "That's right, after I leave you have to pay more attention to that old man's family. I heard that they live outside the city. You have to be careful when you walk on the road. There are many people riding horses outside. If one or two are killed, it will not be good." One of the imperial censors could not help but point at the image of Zhou Chu and said angrily, "Lawless, lawless, does he not have the law in his eyes?" Another imperial censor spat and said coldly, "This is simply the behavior of a beast. He deserves to die." In the court, many people's faces were filled with anger. This was a blatant provocation of the law and justice. They only heard that Zhou Chu was arrogant, but they did not expect him to be so arrogant. Under the strong impact of this image, several officials of the new party also retracted their heads. Whoever dares to speak up for Zhou Chu will definitely offend the public. What worried them more was the emperor's thoughts. His Majesty used his great magical power to reenact the image of yesterday. Does this mean that he is not on the side of the Zhou family? In the video facing the threats around him, the young constable said, "God is watching what we do. God is watching us." Zhou Chu sneered, "God, after so many years, I really want to see what God looks like." "If you have the ability, let them come down." The young arrestor was obviously enraged. He pointed to the sky and scolded God for being blind. As his voice fell, several lightning bolts suddenly fell from the sky. Under the last purple lightning bolt, Zhou Chu turned into ashes. Even some of the high-ranking officials in the court felt their blood boil when they saw this scene. A few of the imperial censors were so excited that their beards trembled. Their eyes were filled with envy and reverence. This was the response of the heavenly axiom. It was the greatest recognition that the heavenly axiom gave to a person. There was no imperial censor who did not desire such recognition. A body of righteousness that can shake the heavens. How magnificent is this? He is still Li Mu, the Li Mu who wrote Do Yi's Injustice. It is His Majesty's blessing to have such a person in the fairies' capital. It is the blessing of the great Zhou. His Majesty must not wrong such a talent. The Empress's dignified voice came from behind the curtain. How do you think this case should be resolved? At the forefront of the officials, a figure stood out. Seeing the figure, all the officials held their breaths. The first person to stand out was none other than the head of the Zhou family, Zhou Chu's uncle, and also the Empress's biological father. The middle-aged man looked up at the image and said, "The people's hearts are the foundation of the great Zhou's continuation." Zhou Chu killed innocent people and did not repent. In the end, he angered the heavenly axiom and punished the heavenly axiom. The officials in the court should learn from this and restrain themselves and their descendants. They should not bully the people and bully the villagers. The head of the Zhou family's words undoubtedly determined the nature of the case. Even the officials of the new party would not use this opportunity to attack the arrestor. Zhou Ting clenched his fists and knelt on the ground with his head lowered. He closed his eyes and said in a trembling voice, "I have not taught my son well. I have let your Majesty and the people down. I am ashamed to be in the court. I wish to resign from the position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works. I hope your Majesty will approve." Chapter 232. Li Mu and Zhang Chun waited for a long time at the gate of the palace. Instead of the Empress, they saw Mr. Mei. Mr. Mei walked out of the palace gate and said to the two, "It's all right now. You can go back." Zhang Chun was stunned and asked, "What's going on inside?" Mr. Mei looked at Li Mu and said, "Her Majesty used the dark light technique to recreate the scene of yesterday." All the officials were furious. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works, Zhou Ting, resigned because he didn't teach his son well. Her Majesty has agreed that Zhou Ting died because of the wrath of heaven. It has nothing to do with you. You can go back now. Zhang Chun asked, "Is there anything else?" Mr. Mei asked, "What do you want?" Zhang Chun shook his head and felt a little regretful, but he didn't say anything. Mr. Mei suddenly took out a stack of fulu from his sleeve and handed it to Li Mu, saying, "This is for you from Her Majesty." Li Mu looked at the stack of purple cloud thunder talismans in his hand thoughtfully. Mr. Mei handed him a jade pendant and said, "This is also for you from Her Majesty." Li Mu took the jade pendant and looked at it over and over. He didn't see anything special about it, so he asked, "What is this?" Mr. Mei said, "This jade pendant can hide the secrets of heaven. Keep it with you." Hearing this, Li Mu suddenly felt that the jade pendant in his hand became heavier. Hiding the secrets of heaven didn't seem to have any real effect. It could neither increase defense nor enhance attack. However, it had a very important function, which was to prevent the ultimate masters from calculating. The masters of Dongxian had already seen through the mysteries of heaven. They could observe the stars and know fate. With a pinch of their fingers they could predict good or bad luck. They could even calculate someone's location and monitor them remotely through the dark light technique. If one had something to hide the secrets of heaven, they could block the calculations of the masters of Dongxian and above. This could be very useful sometimes. The jade pendant that concealed the heavenly secrets and the stack of purple cloud thunder talismans made Li Mu wonder if the Empress knew anything about it. Logically speaking, even if a 7th realm expert could calculate that Zhou Chu's death was related to him, they shouldn't be able to confirm whether he had died directly or indirectly at Li Mu's hands. The Thousand Illusions had said before that the mysteries of heaven were hard to predict. No one could calculate all of the mysteries of heaven. The so-called arithmetic was nothing more than some hazy feelings, very difficult to be specific. He accepted the jade pendant and bowed to Mr. May, saying, "Sister May, please thank His Majesty for me." Mr. May sighed and said, "His Majesty has suffered a lot to protect you this time. I hope you will remember his kindness." Li Mu used to have some worries, but after today his worries had disappeared. From today onwards, he truly regarded himself as one of the Empress' men. It was a pity that he hadn't been summoned today, so he didn't have the chance to see her. However, there was no need to be anxious. Now, he had already begun to hug the Empress's thigh. There would be plenty of opportunities to see her in the future. Zhou Manor. Crash. In a small courtyard, the sound of porcelain shattering could be heard. The maids and servants all stood in the courtyard with their heads lowered, not daring to speak. The middle-aged woman picked up a vase and smashed it. She panted heavily and gritted her teeth, saying, "Zhou Chu died in vain. I can't accept this, I can't accept this." She pointed in the direction of the palace and cursed, "She's also a member of the Zhou family. How can she be so cruel?" Slap. Zhou Ting slapped her face and said in a low voice, "Shut up. His Majesty isn't someone you can talk about." The woman stood there in a daze after being slapped. Moments later she raised her head and looked at Zhou Ting. She shook her head and said, "Crazy? Everyone in the Zhou family is crazy. I want to leave this place. If you don't avenge me, I will." Zhou Ting looked at her departing figure. He raised his foot and finally put it down. In one day he looked haggard and old. The scene in the court today kept replaying in his mind. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, saying, "Li Mu, the palace." The Empress had been in the back garden for a long time after the court ended. She looked in the direction of the Zhou family. After a long time she retracted her gaze and asked, "Am I really cruel?" The young official said, "Zhou Chu deserved his death. It can't be blamed on anyone. Your Majesty doesn't need to blame yourself for this." The Empress seemed to be asking her, but it also seemed like she wasn't asking her. She didn't say anything else and left the garden. She walked in front of a magnificent palace. Above the palace, the words "Ancestral Temple" were written. The young official stopped in front of the Ancestral Temple. Only the imperial family could enter the Great Zhou's Ancestral Temple. For them it was a forbidden area. The Empress walked into the Ancestral Temple. What greeted her eyes was a high platform. On the high platform, from top to bottom, there were more than 10 memorial tablets of the Great Zhou's emperors. In front of the memorial tablets, sandalwood incense rose in spirals. In addition to these memorial tablets, the most eye-catching thing in the Ancestral Temple was a small cauldron. These small cauldrons had 3 legs and 2 handles. They were neatly arranged in a row under the memorial tablets of the Great Zhou's emperors. After a careful count, one would find that there were a total of 36 small cauldrons. The 36 small cauldrons emitted a faint golden light. The golden light was strong and weak. The strong light was dazzling and the weak light was dim. The golden light of each small cauldron condensed into golden lines that converged in a giant cauldron in the Ancestral Temple. The giant cauldron had 3 legs and 6 handles. The body of the cauldron didn't emit any light, but there was a golden dragon swimming in the cauldron. The golden dragon felt the Empress walk in and swam out of the cauldron. It happily circled above her head a few times, and then flew back into the cauldron. In the corner of the Ancestral Temple there were 3 prayer mats. 3 figures sat cross-legged on the prayer mats. Their auras were extremely obscure. They all wore black dragon robes. If one looked closely, one would find that the golden dragon embroidered on their robes only had 4 claws. An old man with a face as withered as tree bark on the left opened his eyes. He looked at the most dazzling cauldron in the center of the 36 small cauldrons and said, "The psyche power of the people of the divine capital has multiplied several times in this month. The guy you transferred from the North County is quite capable." The Empress's expression was calm. She looked at the golden dragon swimming in the cauldron and asked, "When will this strand of Emperor's chi be complete?" The old man said, "During Emperor Wen's time, the sea was clear and the rivers were clear. The people were loyal, but it took 20 years. 2 generations of emperors spent nearly 100 years to produce one strand, and it has already been used by you. With the current Great Zhou, It will take at least 30 years for the next strand of Emperor's Qi to be complete. The Empress frowned and said, "That's too long." The old man said with a smile, "The Zhou clan has been planning to steal the throne since a few hundred years ago. We've been planning this for so long, and our ancestors have sacrificed their lives to obtain a stream of monarch Qi, yet you're not interested in being the emperor. How ironic." The Empress said coldly, "The Zhou family's matters have nothing to do with me." The old man smiled and said, "I'm afraid you will have to sit in this position for a long time. You will slowly lose your family and friends. The officials will respect you and fear you, but they will never reveal their true feelings to you. Your parents will call you Your Majesty and have ulterior motives. No girl will get close to you and no man will like you. You will slowly lose love, hate, happiness, anger, sadness. Stop talking. It's useless. This is the fate of every emperor. You will not be an exception." A golden whip appeared in the Empress's hand. She said word by word, "I told you to stop talking." The old man lowered his head and immediately fell into a deep sleep. The Empress walked out of the ancestral temple. The young female official said respectfully, "Your Majesty." The Empress looked at the respectful expression on her face and said, "Return to the palace, Fairy's capital, Li residence." Li Mu had just upgraded the formation in his residence. He used some Fulu and Dharma treasures that he didn't need in a shop in Fairy's capital that was specially opened for cultivators to exchange for spiritual jades. Then he used the spiritual jades to buy a set of formation flags from another shop. Although Fairy's capital was mostly populated by commoners, there were a few markets that were specially opened for cultivators to trade. Using the upgraded formation of the formation chess, it could temporarily trap a fifth realm cultivator. If one wanted to sneak into the formation silently, they would have to have the cultivation of Dongxian. After doing all this, Li Mu gave most of the purple cloud thunder talismans that the Empress gave him to Xiaobai to protect herself. He only kept a few for himself. The jade pendant and the thunder talisman that the Empress gave him. One was to steal the sky, while the other was to conceal heaven's secrets. No matter how slow Li Mu was, he understood the Empress's intention at this moment. The purple cloud thunder talisman was the proof that Li Mu would use his thunder technique in the future. Otherwise, after Zhou Chu's incident, he couldn't reveal his thunder technique in front of others. This jade pendant that concealed heaven's secrets would prevent cultivators above Dongxian from finding out that he was the culprit. The Empress had thoughtfully prepared these for Li Mu. The Empress must already know that Zhou Chu's death was his doing. A transcendent powerhouse was terrifying. Even so, she still chose to protect Li Mu. This meant that Li Mu still had a place in her heart. He didn't work so hard for her in vain. Not only was she righteous but she was also so protective. He really loved the Empress like this. Chapter 233. Half a month had passed since the Zhou Chu incident. In the morning, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on his bed, slowly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed in his eyes. Although he had been preparing to cultivate both Buddhism and Taoism, he had spent more than 90% of his time cultivating under the guidance of Taoism. He had very little time to recite scriptures and practice Buddhism. Especially after entering the spirit-concentrating realm, the growth of his mana had slowed down. He had spent all his time cultivating Taoism. Now, his Taoist cultivation had reached the third realm, but his Buddhist cultivation had only barely broken through the first realm last night. The first realm of Buddhism was called breakthrough. It meant that Buddhist disciples could see through the mortal world and enter into Buddhism. This realm required the cultivation of the six senses. Now, Li Mu's six senses had been perfected. He did not need to use any supernatural powers to hear the conversation between the butcher and the waiter in the tea house a few streets away. Through his sense of smell, he could easily distinguish the various smells in the air and trace them back to their source. In a way, he already had the innate supernatural powers of some monsters. Some monsters were born with a keen sense of hearing and smell. Although humans were suitable for cultivation, they were far inferior to monsters in terms of innate supernatural powers. Li Qing had once advised him that only by cultivating one of the two sects of Buddhism and Taoism could one attain a profound level. At that time, Li Mu did not feel anything. Now he finally realized that a person's energy was limited. Even if he was talented in both Buddhism and Taoism, it was impossible to cultivate both to a high level. The realms after Buddhism required even more time. His next cultivation focus was on how to break through to the transcendent realm as soon as possible. After the Zhou Chu incident, Zhang Chun was unexpectedly promoted again. He was promoted from Divine Capital Deputy to Divine Capital Magistrate. He was now the leader of the Divine Capital Yamen. Not only that, His Majesty did not appoint a Divine Capital Deputy or Divine Capital Magistrate. In other words, he was in charge of this huge yamen alone. No one could order him around anymore. Li Mu was still the constable of the Divine Capital Yamen. He was an official, not an official. Although officials and officials were both civil servants of the Great Zhou and were paid by the state, there was a clear distinction between the two. There were no harsh requirements to become an official of Great Zhou. Officials were generally appointed by local officials, or their sons would inherit their father's business. As long as their family background was clean and they had not committed any crimes within 3 generations, they would have the qualifications to become a glorious official of the Great Zhou. But officials were different. The lowest-ranking official in Great Zhou, even if it was just a small county magistrate, still needed to receive a few years of formal education in the academy. Only after a few years would they have the qualifications to enter the imperial court as an official. This was a rule set by Emperor Wen in order to clean up the chaos in Great Zhou's officialdom and improve the quality of the officials as a whole. At that time, this measure indeed played a very big role. At that time, the imperial court was full of nepotism, and the officials formed cliques to pursue personal interests. The morality and ability of the officials were mixed. The appearance of the academy greatly improved the situation. If one wanted to become an official in the imperial court, one had to learn the thoughts of the sages in the academies, cultivate one's morals, and learn how to govern a country and cultivate. For a long time, the academies had sent countless talents to the imperial court. This rule had been passed down since the time of Emperor Wen and had been used to this day. Even if the emperor wanted to promote someone, he had to let that person undergo tempering in the academies. Emperor Wen's rule had a far-reaching impact. In the hearts of the people and officials of Great Zhou, Emperor Wen had a very high status. The successive emperors of Great Zhou did not dare to break the rules set by him. In Li Mu's view, this Emperor Wen was really far-sighted. Although this method was different from the imperial examination, it was also very advanced compared to the previous system of selecting officials. Of course, even if Emperor Wen was called a sage, there were still things that he did not expect. For example, the nature of the academy had changed greatly from when it was first established. The deans of the 4 academies were all transcendents. In the academy there were countless experts in the middle realm. Although they were far from the 4 sects and 6 schools, they were still an incomparably powerful force. The officials of Great Zhou could only be born from the academy. The status of the academy gradually became higher and higher, and even had a tendency to surpass the imperial court. Whether it was the Xiao royal family that wanted to regain their glory or the Zhou family that wanted to replace them, to facilitate this major event, they could not do without the support of the academy. Li Mu had never thought of becoming an official, so he did not need to go to the academy to further his studies. Based on what he had seen in Chengdu, becoming an official might not be a good thing. Under the protection of the empress, being a minor official was much more comfortable than being an official. There was no need for Li Mu to worry about national affairs. All he needed to do was to bring Xiao Bai around the streets of the divine capital every day to ensure that there were no crimes or disturbances in his jurisdiction. That was enough for him to fulfill his duty. After Zhou Chu's incident, his status in the hearts of the people had risen to the peak. This allowed him to obtain willpower from the people of Chengdu without deliberately doing anything. With this speed, it was not impossible for him to advance to the Abhijina level within a year. After Zhou Chu's incident, the Zhou family's reputation in Chengdu was not greatly affected. Although Zhou Chu had committed a heinous crime, the Zhou family's handling of this matter did not make the people feel disgusted. There were many disciples of the Zhou family, and Zhou Chu was only one of them. Other than Zhou Chu, the other disciples of the Zhou family did not have any misdeeds. In comparison, the Xiao royal family's performance in Chengdu was even worse. In the past few hundred years, they had been the masters of the great Zhou dynasty in Chengdu. Although they had been suppressed by the Zhou family for a short period of time, the sense of superiority in their bones could not be erased. Li Mu counted with his fingers. He had not been in Chengdu for long, but he had offended the 3 provinces, 6 ministries, 9 temples, the Xiao family, the Zhou family, and the academy. Other than the academy, he had offended almost everyone he could. Li Mu had already offended the Xiao family and its old clique before he came to Chengdu. When he pushed for the abolition of the substitute crime silver, he had also beaten up the children of many officials in the Ministry of Rights, Ministry of Justice, Taichung Temple, and the 3 provinces and 6 ministries. With Zhou Chu's incident, he had also offended the Zhou family. He was only missing the academy to become the public enemy of Chengdu. Among the common people, the situation was the exact opposite. Li Mu was now very popular among the common people. He could go to the small restaurants on the street, to the brothels and taverns. As long as he wanted to, he could buy food, use and entertainment for free. When he passed by the brothel keeper ran out countless times, bringing along many girls. They all winked at Li Mu and said coquettishly, "Constable Li, come in." Xiaobai was so scared that she did not care about the candied haws in her mouth. She ran over and hugged Li Mu's arm, holding her head high and chest out in front of them. Ever since Lu Hanyan went to Mount Baiyun to cultivate, she had been strictly carrying out the task given to her by Lu Hanyan. She did not allow any other seductress to appear beside Li Mu. These girls from the brothels were naturally her main targets of protection. The brothel keeper glanced at Xiaobai and said to Li Mu, "Constable Li, why are you so shy? The girls are not charging you." Li Mu waved his hand. Next time, the yamen had its own rules. In order to prevent officials from being corrupt, they could not eat or take the common people's food for free. They could not go to the brothels during the day. Of course, going to the brothels during the day was also forbidden. There were countless eyes in Luoyang staring at Li Mu. He had to be careful with his words and actions. He could not give anyone a chance to take advantage of him. Xiaobai was still hugging Li Mu's arm tightly. She said, "Sister Lu said that when you come to Luoyang you can't fool around. You can't go to that kind of place." He was the one who saved the little fox, but she had become Lu Hanyan's spy. Li Mu looked at her and asked, "If I go to that kind of place, will you tell Sister Lu?" Xiaobai nodded without hesitation. She said, "I promise, Sister Lu." Li Mu asked again, "If I don't let you tell her, will you listen to Sister Lu or me?" This question made Xiaobai stop chewing on the candied hawthorn. She muttered, I. After a while, she lowered her head and said softly, I will listen to you, benefactor." Li Mu was comforted. Xiaobai's answer proved that she was still his caring little girl. Even if she made a mistake, she would help him hide it. Who would not like a little girl like her? Of course, Li Mu would not make such a mistake. He just wanted to tease Xiaobai. Xiaobai lowered her head and hesitated for a while. Then she looked up and said, "Benefactor, if you want, Xiaobai can do it too. I have already turned into a human." Li Mu patted her head and said, "I'm joking. I won't go to that kind of place." He knew very well that before Xiaobai transformed, she was prepared to give herself to him at any time. However, she was placed by Lu Hanyan to keep an eye on Li Mu. If she betrayed Lu Hanyan and stole from him, how could the two of them be good sisters in the future? Although Xiaobai was indeed very attractive, Li Mu would not lose the big picture for a small gain. He would not be greedy for a moment of pleasure and bury the fuse for a future Azura battlefield. After receiving Li Mu's promise, the girl became happy again. She happily held onto Li Mu's arm and turned back to stick out her tongue in the direction of the brothel. Along the way, Li Mu bought some snacks for Xiaobai. He was about to return to the yamen when his gaze inadvertently swept across the front. His gaze suddenly froze. 2 figures walked past on the street in front of him. The 2 of them, one old and one young, did not see Li Mu. Li Mu did not recognize the young man. His gaze swept past him and stopped on the old man. This was the first time Li Mu saw this old man, but his figure overlapped with a figure in Li Mu's memory. To be precise, it was the memory of the assassin that Li Mu had obtained from Madame Chu in the North County. This old man was the one who had hired the assassin to assassinate Li Mu in the North County. He followed behind the young man step by step. It was obvious that the young man was the leader. In this way, the mastermind behind the assassination in the North County was about to be revealed. In the Shindu Yamen, Li Mu reached out and swiped the void. The image of a young man appeared in the air. Wang Wu looked at the image and said in shock, "No way, boss. You just killed Zhou Chuchu and now you've provoked Zhou Qin?" Chapter 234. Mr. Mei had warned Li Mu to be careful of the Zhou family. Li Mu thought that the assassination in the North County should have been done by the Zhou family. It was not until today that he met the old man in the memory of the assassin that he finally locked onto the mastermind behind the scenes. Through Wang Wu, Li Mu confirmed the man's identity once again. Zhou Qin was Zhou Chu's elder brother, but he was not Zhou Ting's son. Among the 4 brothers of the Zhou family, Zhou Ting was the 4th. Zhou Qin was the only son of the third brother. Zhou Qin usually kept a low profile and was not as flamboyant as Zhou Chu. He also did not bully the people, so the people of Luoyang did not know much about him. The old man beside him was his bodyguard. The disciples of the big families in Luoyang all had bodyguards, and these bodyguards were the closest to them. The fact that the old man appeared in the killer's memory meant that the assassination in Beijun was most likely Zhou Chen's plan. At that time, Li Mu had just offended the old party. If something happened to him, the old party would be the first to be suspected. However, Li Mu did not know whether Zhou Chen had acted on his own, or whether the real mastermind of the Zhou family was involved. The killer was dead, and Li Mu could not accuse Zhou Chen with just his words alone. Moreover, because of him, the Zhou family had just lost a young disciple. If Li Mu pointed the finger at Zhou Chen now, it might completely enrage the Zhou family and bring about their intense revenge. However, the revenge for the assassination had to be taken. As long as he knew the mastermind behind it, he could take his time to plan what to do next. Li Mu walked to the front of the yamen and saw Zhang Chun walking in listlessly. Li Mu greeted him. "Sir, you're out of court?" Ever since he was promoted to Luoyang magistrate, Zhang Chun's rank had risen from 6th grade to 5th grade, and he was qualified to attend court. Although there were many 5th-rank officials in Luoyang and not everyone had the opportunity to attend court, the Luoyang yamen was different from the 6 yamens. Above them there were assistant ministers, doctors and minister counselors. If they had nothing to do they could stay in the yamen. Zhang Chun was the only official in charge of the yamen. Unlike Li Mu who could sleep as long as he wanted with Xiao Bai in his arms, Zhang Chun had to wake up early every 3 days to prepare for the morning court. Li Mu replied, "Your Excellency left court today so you're a bit late." Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, "Don't mention it. The quarrel in the court today was too intense." The guy behind this official almost sprayed his saliva all over this official's face. Li Mu asked curiously, "What's the matter?" Zhang Chun said, "It's all because of the academy. His Majesty thinks that almost all the officials in the 36 counties of the Great Zhou, including Luoyang, are from the academy. In the long run, it will be detrimental to the country. He wants to give up some of the positions of the officials and directly select them from the people. However, the officials are against it." Li Mu said, "That's good." Zhang Chun glanced at him and said, "What's good about it?" Before the academy, the morals and abilities of the officials in the imperial court were uneven. Many untalented and incompetent people could also hold important positions in the imperial court. The people suffered unspeakably. After the academy, the quality of the officials has greatly improved. If the selection of officials goes back to the old days, won't the people suffer that kind of pain again? It seemed that Zhang Chun also supported the academy. Li Mu asked, "Your Excellency, are you also from the academy?" Hearing this, Zhang Chun's face showed a proud expression. He said, "Yes. When I was young I studied in the Myriad Scroll Academy. After I finished my studies in the academy, I became the county magistrate of Yangqiu." Li Mu asked, "Before the academy the people suffered unspeakably. After the academy the people's lives became better?" Zhang Chun's lips moved, but he found that he could not answer Li Mu. Before Emperor Wen, after the golden age of Emperor Wu, the counties were no longer troubled by the demons and ghosts. However, the people's lives did not seem to be better. After the death of Emperor Wen, the quality of the officials was greatly improved. Today the people should be living a better life. However, as far as he knew, the people of the 36 counties of Great Zhou were far from living in peace and contentment. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Do you mean that Emperor Wen was wrong?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Emperor Wen was not wrong. However, the decrees of Emperor Wen's time are not necessarily suitable for the present. During Emperor Wen's time, the officials in the imperial court were both good and bad. There was a big flaw in the way the imperial court chose officials. Emperor Wen's decisive reform led to the famous rule of Emperor Wen. At that time, the academy was beneficial to improving the ecology of the imperial court. But it's different now. The chaos of the imperial court during Emperor Wen's time has long disappeared. The students of the academy have almost monopolized the imperial court. The officials are divided into camps based on the academy. They form cliques and protect each other. The decrees of Emperor Wen's time are no longer suitable for the current imperial court." Zhang Chun looked at him with a strange expression and said, "I really should let you attend the imperial court. If you were there in the morning, there would not be no one to speak for Her Majesty." Li Mu was very sure that many people in the imperial court must have seen what he saw. However, they were all from the academy. If they agreed with the Empress, wouldn't they be standing on the opposite side of the academy? They already belonged to their own camp. Naturally, they would not betray their own camp. Moreover, with the power and influence of the academy, even the new party and the old party had to rely on it. Who in the imperial court dared to oppose the academy? Li Mu could imagine the scene of Her Majesty being opposed by the officials in the morning court. Unfortunately, he was only a minor official and was not even qualified to defend her. Li Mu did not know much about the academy. After calling Wang Wu, he had a better understanding of the academy. There were 4 great academies in the divine capital. They were called Baichuan, Qingyun, Wanwan, and Bailu. They started during the reign of Emperor Wen and had been passed down for more than 100 years. Among the 4 great academies, Bailu Academy was different from the other 3. It was the only academy that was directly under the Ministry of War. The dean of Bailu Academy was the Minister of War. The purpose of Bailu Academy's existence was to defend against foreign enemies. It had never been involved in political struggles. Almost all the students from Bailu Academy would not stay in the divine capital. They needed to go to the borders of the Great Zhou to protect the border counties and prevent the neighboring countries, the Demon Country, the Ghost Region, and the Dragon Clan from invading. Fortunately, after the Martial Emperor, the Great Zhou had become the most powerful country in the ancestral land. Most of the surrounding countries respected the Great Zhou. Those who did not respect the Great Zhou as their sovereign country did not dare to offend the Great Zhou. The Demon Country and the Ghost Region had always been in a state of internal strife. They did not pose much of a threat to the Great Zhou for the time being. Although the Dragon Clan was powerful, they lived in the sea for a long time and rarely appeared on the mainland. The current situation of the Great Zhou was more of an internal problem than an external one. Wanwan Academy focused on teaching the concept of governance and governance. Many of the students from Wanwan Academy did not know how to cultivate, but they all had unique views on how to govern a country. After graduating from the academy, those who were more capable would stay in the divine capital to take up positions. Those who were less capable would be sent to other places to train. Qingyun Academy and Baichuan Academy focused more on cultivation. Those who studied in these 2 academies were all students with a certain level of cultivation talent. After leaving the academy, they would either take up important positions in the divine capital or guard a county. They had the brightest future. There were 36 counties in the Great Zhou, and at least 90 of them came from these 2 academies. There were 106 county governors, county ministers, and county lieutenants. Of course, the academies did not belong to any political party. In terms of cohesion, they were naturally not as united as the new party or the old party. However, the status of the academies was extraordinary. The students who graduated from the academies all had a deep sense of belonging to the academies. Perhaps they were dissatisfied with the academies when they were studying, but they would never allow outsiders to trample on the dignity of the academies. Whether it was in the divine capital or in the various counties, officials who came from the same academy would naturally have a close relationship. Everything was shown in the imperial court, and they would form a cohesive group. The imperial palace. It was already late at night. The empress stood in the empty palace. She no longer looked dignified in front of others. There was still anger on her face. She was angry about what happened in the imperial court. She looked around, trying to find someone to talk to and vent her frustrations. However, she could not find anyone. In fact, since she was forced to take this position 3 years ago, there was no one she could talk to. That person was right. Sitting in this position, she would slowly lose her family and friends. No one would reveal their true feelings to her. Her parents called her Her Majesty and wanted her to pass the throne to a descendant of the Zhou family. Her former friends only had respect and fear for her now. She had gotten everything that others wanted, but she had lost everything that she wanted. She walked out of the palace and looked up at the sky. Suddenly, she thought of someone. The Li residence. Li Mu was sleeping soundly with Xiao Bai in his arms. Suddenly, white mist filled his vision. A familiar figure appeared in front of him. Li Mu had not seen his other personality for a long time. When he saw her again, he felt a sense of familiarity. He waved at her and said, "Long time no see." Although the interaction between the 2 personalities was not very pleasant in the beginning, she did not appear every day. She also did not torture Li Mu every time she appeared. Li Mu was not as afraid of her as he was in the beginning. The beautiful woman's expression was a little ugly. She did not pay attention to Li Mu. Li Mu's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if she was on her period. Would her inner demons be on their period? In order to prevent her from venting her anger on him, Li Mu prepared to slip away. The next moment the scenery in front of him changed. The two of them appeared at the peak of a mountain. There was a pavilion at the peak of the mountain. At this moment the two of them were sitting in the pavilion. There were a few exquisite dishes in front of them. The aroma of the dishes made Li Mu swallow a mouthful of saliva. He complained in his heart. Whose dream was this? Why was her control of the dream more skillful than his? The surrounding scenery was so real. Li Mu could hear the birds, smell the fragrance of flowers, and even feel the mountain breeze blowing on his face. The few dishes in front of him were so delicious that Li Mu began to wonder whether this was a dream or reality. Legend has it that the powerhouses of the upper realm can use a kind of dream transference ability. They can use their consciousness to invade other people's dreams and freely weave the content of the dream. The person who was transferred by the dream would not be able to distinguish between the dream and reality. They would even be trapped in it forever. Li Mu looked around and could not help but sigh. The legendary dream transference technique was just like this, right? Li Mu looked at the woman opposite him and asked, "Are you in a bad mood?" The woman did not answer, but the answer was written on her face. Li Mu did not know why a heart demon would be in a bad mood. He poured a cup of wine for the two of them and said, "Since you are in a bad mood, I will accompany you to drink a few cups." He gulped down the wine in his cup and sighed softly. The woman looked at him and asked, "What are you sighing for?" There was nothing to hide from his other self. Li Mu said leisurely, "Unfortunately, I am not Lord Jiang. Otherwise, in today's morning court, I would not have let His Majesty face the officials alone." The woman raised her eyebrows, looked at Li Mu and said, "What's so good about that woman? She is just a rebel who seized power and stole the country. Is it worth it for you to protect her like this?" Bang! Li Mu slammed the wine cup on the stone table, stood up abruptly and said impolitely, "If you disrespect His Majesty again, I will go back. You can drink this wine alone." The mouth of the person who received it was soft. After receiving so many benefits from the Empress, Li Mu could not protect her in the court. If he could not even protect her in the dream, then the next time he received benefits from the Empress, his conscience would not be at ease. The woman did not expect that this sentence would anger Li Mu. Her gaze swept over him and she lowered her head and said, "Well, I will not speak ill of her. Sit down." Chapter 235. Li Mu didn't know what other people's inner demons were like, but his seemed to be somewhat different. She obviously didn't have much desire to erode Li Mu's consciousness and occupy his body. Instead, she was not very friendly to the Empress. Was it because of jealousy? Speaking of which, Li Mu was also a little jealous of the Empress at first. After all, she was young and had a high position. She had stepped into the upper realm before the age of 30. Who wouldn't be envious of her? Could it be that the birth of this woman was due to Li Mu's jealousy? Cultivation was really dangerous at every step. Even a small emotion in the heart could be infinitely magnified. The inner demons had no substance. If he wanted to overcome or eliminate them, he had to rely on his inner cultivation. The beautiful woman took a sip of wine and asked, "You have never met her, why are you so protective of her?" Li Mu said, "Your Majesty treats me sincerely, so I should treat Your Majesty sincerely. Moreover, although Your Majesty is a woman, compared to the previous emperors of the Great Zhou, her wisdom and virtue should be at the forefront. The North County girl died unjustly, and the court covered up a corrupt official. Your Majesty upheld justice for her. The Academy has become a chronic disease of the Great Zhou, and the students of the Academy have formed cliques for selfish interests and control the court. No one in the court dares to mention it. Only Your Majesty is aggressive and brave to reform. Isn't such a person worthy of respect and protection?" After Li Mu finished speaking, he raised his head and drank a glass of wine, secretly feeling pity in his heart. If these words were heard by the Empress, she might be happy and reward him with some treasures. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the chance to see the Empress and could only talk to himself in his dreams. The woman took a deep look at Li Mu and didn't say anything in the end. She drank alone. Although Li Mu was curious, he didn't ask much. A personality with self-consciousness, to some extent, was a completely different person. They had their own fantasy life and identity. Li Mu had seen a movie before in which the protagonist had 10 personalities with different identities. Their gender, age, and identity were different, and between the different personalities they would kill each other. Judging from the current situation, Li Mu and his other self were getting along quite well. Even if she wanted to harm Li Mu could still exit the dream at any time. She didn't seem to have such thoughts either. When he woke up from his dream, Li Mu was still reminiscing about the delicious food in his dream. Unfortunately, a dream was still a dream. When he woke up, he couldn't recall the taste of those delicacies. After washing up and eating breakfast, he went to the yamen with Xiao Bai. Li Mu was about to go out on patrol when he saw Mr. Mei and two other people outside the government office. Li Mu stepped forward and asked, "Sister Mei, what's the matter?" Mr. Mei said, "Jianghu County offered a batch of tribute pears yesterday. His Majesty asked me to give you a box." Li Mu was a little flattered. Although it was just a box of pears, it represented His Majesty the Empress's intentions. It meant that she would think of him for such a small matter. During the transportation of this kind of tribute, Fulu would be stuck on the box. Even if it was transported to Shindu, it would be no different from freshly picked ones. Li Mu took one for himself and gave one to Xiao Bai. He took a bite of the tribute pear and found that the pear skin was thin, juicy, and sweet. It was worthy of being chosen as a tribute pear. Mr. Mei said, "If there's nothing else, I'll go back to the palace first." "Wait." Li Mu suddenly stopped her and asked, "Sister Mei, what should I do if I encounter an inner demon in the process of cultivation?" Li Mu knew very little about inner demons. Even Thousand Illusions Shanren was not omniscient. Faced with this kind of thing that he had never encountered in his cultivation, Li Mu did not know how to deal with it for a moment. Although Mr. Mei's cultivation was not as high as Thousand Illusions Shanren's, she was by the Empress's side and must have seen many things. Perhaps she could explain to Li Mu. "Inner demon?" Mr. Mei frowned and asked, "You encountered an inner demon?" Li Mu nodded. Mr. Mei continued to ask, "What kind of inner demon?" Li Mu described, "Sometimes I dream of a woman." Mr. Mei glanced at him. "Isn't it normal to dream of a woman?" Li Mu explained, "It's not what you think. It's a strange woman. I've dreamed of her more than once. She seems to have independent thoughts and can even control my dreams." "More than once, independent thoughts." Mr. Mei frowned and asked, "Can she control your body?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "That won't happen." "That's strange." Mr. Mei said in surprise, "Once an inner demon of this level appears, it will definitely fight for control of the body. If it wins, it will completely control the original body. If it loses, its consciousness will be destroyed. It's very rare for two consciousnesses to coexist." Li Mu asked, "In other words, it's possible for such a situation to exist?" Mr. Mei nodded and said, "As far as I know, there are very few people who have more than two consciousnesses coexisting in their bodies. Most of the time his body is dominated by the main consciousness, but when he encounters a life and death crisis, the other consciousness will awaken. This kind of second consciousness can sometimes be more terrifying than the main consciousness." Li Mu felt that he was in this situation as Mr. Mei said. In his dreams, the woman could turn the tables and easily beat Li Mu. Her strength was very terrifying. Although the two of them could coexist peacefully for the time being, no one could say for sure what would happen in the future. Li Mu asked, "How do I get rid of this kind of inner demon?" Mr. Mei shook his head and said, "You can only rely on yourself to defeat the inner demon. When your consciousness is strong enough, you can easily erase the consciousness of the inner demon." She looked at Li Mu and asked, "What does your inner demon look like?" Li Mu reached out and swiped in the air. A woman's shadow appeared in the air. This was a small spell that could be mastered in the Jusen stage. It was a weakened version of the art of black light. The art of black light of the cultivators in Dongshan could turn stillness into motion and appear in real time. It could surpass the power of heaven and earth and reappear the past that had already happened. It was said that the most powerful cultivators in the ninth realm could even see the future temporarily through this spell. As for whether it was true or not, Li Mu didn't know. Mr. Mei looked at the woman. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes and his mouth opened slightly. Li Mu saw the change in her expression and had a bad feeling. He asked, What's wrong?" Mr. Mei coughed and his expression returned to normal. He asked, "When did you get this inner demon?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "I think it was the night when His Majesty abolished the substitutes in silver. I met her for the first time in my dream. She tied me up and whipped me." Thinking of what happened in his dream that night, Li Mu still felt a bit aggrieved. Hearing this, Mr. Mei's expression was very strange. It seemed like he wanted to laugh but was trying hard to hold it in. A few black lines appeared on Li Mu's forehead as he asked, "Are you laughing at me?" Mr. Mei shook his head and said, "No, haha." Seeing Li Mu's serious face, she coughed and said, "I'm not laughing at you. I just thought of something funny. Haha. she put one hand on Li Mu's shoulder and the other hand on her stomach. After laughing she said panting, "Don't worry. There are all kinds of strange things on the road of cultivation. The inner demon isn't all bad. She doesn't want to take over your body. Just think of it as a dream. Isn't it good to go on dates with a beautiful woman in your dreams?" Li Mu asked suspiciously, "Is it really okay?" Mr. May patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry. It's okay." Judging from Mr. May's tone, she didn't seem to be lying to Li Mu or comforting Li Mu. For now, Li Mu didn't feel that the woman was a threat to him. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Mr. May said, "Haven't you always wanted to know about His Majesty? Since we're free now, I'll tell you." When Li Mu heard this, he was instantly interested. Mr. May said, "Since you're already His Majesty's man, there's something you need to know." Li Mu asked, "What's the matter?" Mr. May said, "People say that His Majesty stole the Emperor's chi from the ancestral temple and used it to transcend and take over the world. You think so too, don't you?" Li Mu asked, "Is there more to it than meets the eye?" Mr. May said, "It's true that His Majesty got the Emperor's chi, but he didn't do it willingly. When he married the former crown prince, became the Empress and obtained the Emperor's chi, it was all part of the Zhou family's scheme." Li Mu really didn't know that there was such an inside story. He continued to listen to Mr. May. The Emperor's chi is condensed from the psyche power of the people of the Great Zhou. The 36 counties of the Great Zhou collect the psyche power of the people through the ancestral temple and gather it in the ancestral temple. It will gradually nurture a strand of Emperor's chi. Obtaining this Emperor's chi can allow mortals to transcend. In the past, it would be passed to the Emperor to ensure the continuation of the Great Zhou dynasty. There were shortcuts to cultivation. Some shortcuts could even allow one to reach the sky in one step. Xiaoyu, with the body of a mortal, was able to move heaven and earth and advance 5 realms in a row. The methods of the royal family of the Great Zhou were obviously more brilliant. They used the psyche power of hundreds of millions of people to cultivate, so that there would always be a powerhouse of the upper realm in the royal family to ensure the continuation of imperial power. However, during the last change of imperial power, this strand of Emperor's chi was obtained by an outsider, causing the Xiao royal family to lose their opportunity. It was no wonder that Her Majesty could succeed the throne so smoothly. After Emperor Wen, the Great Zhou showed signs of decline. The people's sentiment decreased year by year. The last strand of Emperor's chi was formed after 2 generations of emperors. In other words, the Xiao royal family had not produced a powerhouse of the upper realm for decades. The cultivation of the previous 2 emperors stopped at Dongxian. If there was no powerhouse to guard the country, they would not be able to intimidate the surrounding countries, not to mention the Yao nation and the Ghost Realm. Even if the Xiao clan was unwilling, they could only temporarily let the empress succeed the throne. It was precisely because the Zhou family understood this that they were able to take advantage of the Xiao clan. Mr. May looked at Li Mu and said, "You are one of Her Majesty's people. I don't want you to misunderstand Her Majesty like others." Li Mu nodded and said solemnly, "I understand." Mr. May asked, "Besides these, do you have anything else you want to ask?" Li Mu thought for a while and asked, "It is said that the former crown prince likes men and that he and Her Majesty are only husband and wife on the surface. Is that true?" Chapter 236. Bang. As soon as Li Mu finished speaking, Mr. May hit him on the head. Mr. May glared at him and said, "Didn't I tell you not to criticize Her Majesty? If other internal guards heard you, you would be hung up and beaten." Li Mu rubbed his head and said, "Isn't it right in front of you?" Mr. May snorted and said, "Not even in front of me." Li Mu shook his head and said, Okay, I won't ask any more." Gossiping was human nature. The higher a person's status was, the more people would gossip about them. Not only Li Mu, but many people in Luoyang were gossiping about this. "Okay, I've delivered Her Majesty's reward. I'm going back to the palace." Mr. May looked at him angrily and said, "Her Majesty is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Don't talk about her behind her back. Not only can you not talk about her, but you can't let others talk about her either." Li Mu stood up straight and said seriously, "Yes, Your Majesty." He called her sister May all the time, and it was not in vain. In the end, she answered Li Mu indirectly to satisfy his gossiping. A pure as ice and as pure as jade solved Li Mu's doubts. The fire of gossip was extinguished. Li Mu saw Zhang Chun standing at the door of the side hall and asked, "Sir, do you want to eat a pear? This pear is very sweet." It's the tribute pair given by Her Majesty. Xianxia walked out and asked, "What did you do? Why did Her Majesty suddenly reward you?" Li Mu said, "Nothing. Maybe there are too many tribute pairs in Jianghu County and Her Majesty can't finish them all." Hearing this, Xianxia looked at Li Mu and wanted to spit at him. Even if Her Majesty could not finish the tribute pairs and wanted to reward the officials, there was no reason for her to skip over him, the magistrate of Luoyang, and reward the arrester of Luoyang. Moreover, Her Majesty rewarding a house and a box of pears were two completely different things. Because of their meritorious service, His Majesty had rewarded many people with residences. Although the value of this box of pears was very low and could not be compared to the official residence, it represented the emperor's heart. This meant that His Majesty still had Li Mu in his heart. Even if he did not make any contributions, His Majesty might still think of him when he woke up, slept, or ate. What kind of heavenly grace was this? Xianxia took a pear and took a bite. What kind of tribute pear is this? It's so sour. He put the pear in his mouth, grabbed 2 more pears from the box with both hands and left. Xiao Bai chewed on the pear and said, "This pear is obviously very sweet. It's not sour at all." Li Mu, maybe he just happened to pick a sour one? He waved his hand at Wang Wu at the door and said, "These are the tribute pears bestowed by His Majesty. Take them and distribute them among your brothers." It was just a box of tribute pears, but it was a sharp weapon to win people's hearts. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he could win over a wave of people's hearts for himself and Her Majesty. Mr. Mei was right. Many people criticized the process of the Empress seizing the throne. Even most of the officials in Great Zhou did not like to see a woman become the Empress. Li Mu said to the people who had been summoned by Wang Wu, "After eating, go out and patrol. If you find any illegal behavior that you can't handle, come to me." The constables each took a pear and said to Li Mu, "Thank you, boss." Li Mu waved his hand. "This is a reward from Her Majesty. If you want to thank someone, thank Her Majesty." Imperial Palace. Chengel Hall. In the void of the hall, there was a picture quietly flowing. The young female official snorted and said, "This person is rude to Her Majesty again. Why don't we take him to the internal guards and teach him a good lesson?" Mr. Mei came in from outside the hall. Seeing the scene of the Luoyang government and hearing the young female official's words, he already realized what had happened. He said, "Your Majesty, although Li Mu's words are a bit presumptuous, he is absolutely loyal to Your Majesty. He always protects Your Majesty and thinks that Your Majesty." The young female official said with a cold face, "If we don't teach him a good lesson this time, who knows what other offensive words he will say to Your Majesty in the future." The Empress looked calm as if she was not angry at all. She just said, "Mei Wei, send him another box of tribute pears tomorrow." Mr. Mei bowed and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." The young female official said angrily, "Your Majesty. Your Majesty will leave first." Mr. Mei took her hand and pulled her out of the hall. The young female official shook off his hand and said unhappily, "He was disrespectful to Your Majesty. Why are you always protecting him?" Mr. Mei said to her, "If Your Majesty wants to punish him, she will. We don't have to do anything about it." The young female official said angrily, "What's so good about him? He was disrespectful to Your Majesty. You protect him and Your Majesty is so tolerant of him. Not only did she give him the tribute pears that Your Majesty likes to eat, but she also used the dark light technique to look at him." Her chest heaved up and down. Obviously she was very angry. For someone like her who worshipped the Empress, it was hard for her to accept all this. "Shoo." Mr. Mei made a shushing gesture and said, "It's because he was disrespectful to Your Majesty that Your Majesty treats him differently from others." The young female official frowned. Obviously she didn't understand what he meant. Mr. Mei explained, "You're still young. There are some things that you don't understand. It's lonely at the top. When Your Majesty is in that position, everyone, including us, respects and fears her. After a long time Your Majesty will get tired. Sometimes what she needs is someone who disrespects her." The young female official said, "What kind of twisted logic is that?" Mr. Mei shook his head and said, "Your Majesty didn't want to be in this position. She's much lonelier than we thought. In front of us she only shows one side, but in fact the side that she hides is the real her." Li Mu walked out of the government office. He looked up at the sky and scratched his head in confusion. Since just now he had a strange feeling that someone was spying on him in the dark. This feeling came and went. Li Mu searched for a long time but he couldn't find the source. In this situation either he had an illusion, or the spying person's cultivation was much higher than his and used a high-level magic like the art of mystic light. The latter was unlikely. Li Mu had the jade pendant given to him by the Empress. It could isolate heaven's secrets, block the calculations of transcendent cultivators, and also block the art of mystic light. After leaving the government office, this feeling disappeared completely. He patrolled the government office with Xiao Bai. At night, when he was sitting cross-legged on the bed to cultivate, sleepiness suddenly attacked him. Li Mu had experienced this feeling of sleepiness for no reason several times. He already knew what would happen next. Sure enough, after a mist appeared in front of him, the woman's figure appeared in front of Li Mu. She stretched out her hands and a whip appeared in her hands. It was a whip that Li Mu hadn't seen for a long time. Li Mu's eyelids twitched and his expression changed greatly. He immediately said, "What do you want?" The woman said indifferently, "Nothing, I just want to exchange pointers with you." "What exchange?" It was clearly a one-sided trampling. Li Mu quickly stretched out his hand and said, "Stop, even if you want to exchange pointers you don't have to use force. We can exchange pointers." The woman glanced at him and asked, "What kind of grammar?" Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Do you know how to play Go?" The woman said, "I know a little about the rules." Li Mu closed his eyes and meditated. A stone table and 2 stone chairs appeared in front of them. A chessboard was carved on the stone table, and next to the chessboard was a chessboard. Li Mu picked up a black piece and placed it in the corner of the chessboard. He immediately said, "It's your turn." In the dream, Li Mu couldn't beat her. He could only make a prompt decision and make the decision for her. Although Li Mu's Go skills weren't high, it was still easy for him to beat a rookie who knew a little about the rules. The woman glanced at Li Mu, picked up the white piece and placed it in another place. Li Mu sighed in relief. He suspected that today was a special day for her every month. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and made a prompt decision to avoid being trampled on by her. After a moment, the woman placed a single word and said to Li Mu, "You lost." Li Mu stared blankly at the chessboard. Only then did he realize that what she said about knowing a little about the rules and what he understood were not the same at all. The woman looked at him and shook her head. "It's boring to exchange pointers. Let's exchange pointers." "Wait." Li Mu stretched out his hand again and said, "1 game doesn't mean anything. We'll win 2 out of 3 games?" He closed his eyes and concentrated. The chessboard on the table suddenly changed, and the boundary between Chu and Han appeared. The woman looked at the strange chessboard and asked, "What is this?" "Chinese chess." There was no such thing as Chinese chess in this world. Li Mu smiled and said, "If you don't know how, I can teach you." The woman learned very quickly. Li Mu only explained the rules of Chinese chess to her once, and she was already able to move. Of course, after 20 moves she lost to Li Mu. Li Mu sighed in relief and clasped his fist. "Thank you for letting me win." "I admit it." The woman didn't even raise her head. She rearranged the pieces and said, "Again." Although it was a bit shameless to attack her weakness with his strength, Li Mu could only be shameless once in order to not be trampled on. This time the woman played very slowly. After 30 moves Li Mu frowned. He didn't expect her to learn so quickly. If this continued he was afraid that he would lose this game. He picked up a chess piece, thought for a moment and ate one of her pieces. The woman looked at him and asked, "Why can your pawn take 2 moves?" Li Mu explained, "You don't know, right? This pawn is an elite. It can take 2 moves." The woman didn't say anything and continued playing. Li Mu picked up a chess piece and ate another one of her pieces. The woman frowned. "Why does your horse move, I, but not son?" Li Mu explained, "This is only a fine horse. It can move, I." The woman didn't say anything and moved the chess piece again. Li Mu's carriage turned and ate her piece. She looked up at Li Mu and asked, "Why doesn't your carriage go in a straight line?" Li Mu smiled and asked, "Isn't it common knowledge that a carriage can turn?" The woman was silent for a moment. She stretched out her hand and the whip appeared again. She stood up and looked at Li Mu. "Show your weapon." Chapter 237. During breakfast, Xiao Bai saw Li Mu's tired face and asked, "Savior, did you not sleep well last night?" Li Mu said listlessly, "I'm fine. I just had a nightmare last night." A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean, even if it was a woman he imagined. Li Mu did not know how he had offended her. She was fine last night, But then she turned hostile again and tormented Li Mu for most of the night. If it was just a night without sleep, it was nothing to Li Mu now. He could still be energetic if he did not sleep for 10 days or half a month. However, excessive mental exhaustion in the dream would also affect reality. Last night, he had fought more than 300 rounds with the inner demon. He had even mastered the use of the mantra a lot. Although he was a little mentally exhausted, he had gained a lot. After breakfast, he returned to the yamen with Xiao Bai. Li Mu learned from Wang Wu that the Empress had sent another box of tribute pears early in the morning. Li Mu was a little confused. How did the Empress know that he liked pears? He was actually a little reluctant to share the tribute pears with everyone yesterday. He did not need to share this box of pears with them. He and Xiao Bai would take it home to eat at night. After that, he returned to his room, changed into his official uniform, and went out to patrol while collecting psychokinesis. Cultivation after the omnipotent realm was much harder than he had imagined. Li Qing did not take long to advance from the omnipotent realm to the omnipotent realm. Although her talent was not as good as Li Mu's, she had already built a solid foundation after more than 10 years of accumulation. Li Mu adjusted his train of thought. After experiencing the rapid advancement, he was indeed a little impatient for success during this period of time. Although there were shortcuts in cultivation, pursuing them too much would also create hidden dangers for oneself. If Li Mu's mana was cultivated step by step like Li Qing, the inner demon would not have a chance to invade at all. He felt that his cultivation was slow, but it was actually only compared to before. In reality, to be able to enter the third realm of cultivation at such a young age was definitely not slow. Moreover, he had not been cultivating for long. Most cultivators would cultivate their entire lives and only reach the omnipotent realm. Li Mu originally wanted Xiao Bai to stay in the yamen to cultivate, but she had to follow Li Mu on patrol. Li Mu did not know whether she simply wanted to stick to him or to be Lu Hanyan's spy. She wanted to follow Li Mu and keep an eye on him so that he did not flirt with other women. Li Mu had always been strictly abiding by Lu Hanyan's promise. In the 2 months in the Immortal's capital, apart from Xiao, Mr. Mei do not count. Although plum blossoms were flowers, Mr. Mei did not count. If she were a few years older, she would be old enough to be Li Mu's mother. After leaving the yamen, Li Mu walked along the main street, patrolling the area. The Immortal's capital was divided into districts called markets by the crisscrossing streets. So far, Li Mu had only been to less than 30% of the markets. There was no strict distinction between markets. Each market was both a residential area and a commercial area. In a market, residential, living, and entertainment functions were available. It could satisfy the daily needs of most people. These markets had different functions. Most of them were for the common people to live in, while the rest had their own functions. For example, the South Court and North Court, which occupied more than 10 markets, were for the rich and powerful. They were close to the palace and had the best location. The scenery was beautiful and the environment was quiet. There were also some high-end markets that were for the entertainment of the rich and powerful. Ordinary people could not afford them. Some high-end brothels, music halls, dance halls, and restaurants would only appear in these markets. Different from other markets, the brothels here wouldn't have brothels and girls standing at the entrance to solicit customers. When the customers entered, they wouldn't get straight to the point. They would usually talk about life and dreams first, which would take a longer time and cost more money. As for music halls and dance halls, they were places where the cultured gathered. In the Immortal's capital, those who were qualified to be cultured were the rich. Li Mu heard this from Wang Wu. It was said that in some brothels, besides human women, there were also demons and ghosts. As long as one had enough money, they could satisfy all kinds of people's hobbies. The Immortal's capital was not a one-sided place. To some people it was hell, but to others it was heaven. The peaceful market that Li Mu and Xiao Bai were in was a high-end market that gathered brothels, music halls, dance halls, and restaurants. There were not many ordinary people on the streets. There was an endless stream of carriages passing by. Those who passed by were either the rich and powerful or the young officials. The constables of the Immortal's capital liked this kind of market very much. This was because those who came in and out of these markets were all people of status. Many of them thought that they were cultured. This made these markets more orderly. There were very few cases, so there was no need to pay too much attention to them. Since he could not obtain more psyche power here, Li Mu still wanted to take root among the ordinary people. Just as he was about to leave with Xiao Bai, he heard a melodious tune. Li Mu stopped and stood on the street, listening carefully. This was not the first time Li Mu had heard this tune. When he was in the northern region, Lu Hanyan often played it for him. When he heard this tune, Li Mu began to miss her. Xiao Bai hugged her sword and listened for a while. She said, "Sister Lu played this tune before." Li Mu looked in the direction of the music. His gaze finally stopped in front of a music hall called Great Music Hall. Li Mu had heard this name many times from Lu Hanyan. When she was young, she was sold to a music hall by her parents. The name of the music hall was Great Music Hall. That was where she and Wanwan grew up. They had lived there for more than 10 years. Standing in front of the Great Music Hall, Li Mu suddenly wanted to go in and see the place where they used to live. He walked into the music hall. A beautiful girl came up to him and asked, "Do you want to listen to music?" Li Mu asked, "How many great music halls are there in the Immortal's capital?" The girl was stunned for a moment. Then she said, "Only one." There was only one great music hall in the Immortal's capital. Li Mu and Xiao Bai could not be wrong. He smiled at the girl and said, "Let's listen to music." The girl smiled and asked, "Do you have a musician you like? Would you like a musician to play for you in the private room or in the hall with the other guests?" Li Mu's family owned a music hall. Naturally, he was not unfamiliar with the business model here. When they arrived at the music hall, the guests could listen to music in the hall according to the music hall's arrangement. They could also choose one or several musicians to play for them in the private room. Of course, the latter was more expensive. It usually cost dozens of taels of silver. Sitting in the hall and listening to music for 2 hours would cost at most a few taels of silver. An ordinary family's annual expenses were only 10 taels of silver. The expenses here were astronomical for ordinary people. Of course, to the rich people in the Immortal's capital, this was nothing. Li Mu certainly would not spend dozens of taels of silver to listen to a song. He decisively chose the latter. The girl smiled and said, "Please follow me." She led the two of them through a screen and into a hall. The music hall would arrange a fixed number of songs every day and charge according to the seats. The closer to the musicians, the more expensive the seats were. The seats in the back corner were the cheapest. Li Mu and Xiao Bai chose a seat in the middle. They ordered a pot of tea and a stack of pastries and preserved fruits. They sat in their seats and waited quietly. There were not many guests in the hall. There were only about a dozen of them. They all had extraordinary auras. Li Mu did not know any of them. He only knew a few of the children of the officials in the Immortal's capital. He did not know most of them. After all, many officials were very strict with their children. They would not let them run amok in the Immortal's capital. Li Mu naturally did not have the chance to know them. He looked at the stage in front of him. Not long ago Lu Hanyan should have been there. He worked hard every day to save enough money for her freedom. Then he left the Immortal's capital and came to the North County, where he met Li Mu. The musicians had not yet gone on stage and the performance had not started. The guests below the stage occasionally chatted with each other. Miss Yinin's skills are getting better and better. Listening to her play is a great enjoyment in life. Miss Yinin has improved a lot in the past half year. Many people are here for her. Ever since Miss Hanyan left, the Great Music Bar has been promoting Miss Yinin. In half a year she became the star of the Great Music Bar. Miss Hanyan is worthy of being the #1 musician in the Immortal's capital. Unfortunately, she suddenly disappeared a year ago and no one knows where she went. I also miss Miss Hanyan. Li Mu drank his tea. He did not expect to hear Lu Hanyan's name from these people. Wanwan said that she was proficient in all kinds of musical instruments and was very famous in the Immortal's capital. It was not an exaggeration at all. Lu Hanyan had never bragged about this. Li Mu also only knew about it now. Not long after, a woman hugged a Guqin and walked up to the stage. The discussions below gradually stopped. Zheng, when the sound of the Guqin entered their ears, their minds couldn't help but be shaken. Li Mu looked at the woman on the stage and smiled. Although it was his first time meeting Miss Yinin, he had heard about her many times from Lu Hanyan. This caused Li Mu to feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity even though it was his first time meeting her. In the music bar there were many small groups. Yinin and Lu Hanyan were close like sisters. Li Mu looked at her as if she was his sister-in-law. After the song ended, the woman on the stage stood up and bowed to the guests below. She said gently, "Thank you for coming." Yinin will take her leave. She walked down the stage and was about to leave with her Guqin. A young man sitting in the front row suddenly stood up and said, "Miss Yinin, I am from the 100 Rivers Academy. I have admired you for a long time. I hope you can give me a chance." Yinin hugged her Guqin and took 2 steps back. She apologized, "Young master, I am sorry. Yinin's status is lowly. I am not worthy of you," the young man said. I am not marrying you as my wife. You can be my concubine." Enin shook her head and said, "I am sorry. Enin has no plans to marry." The young man took a step forward and said, "What's so good about playing for others here? If you follow me you will enjoy endless glory and wealth. Do you still need to suffer like this?" Enin took 2 steps back and said hurriedly, "I like this place very much. I have no intention of leaving." A trace of anger appeared on the young man's face. He reached out and wanted to grab her wrist, but his shoulder was pressed down from behind. Li Mu used a little force and the young man was pulled behind him. The young man said angrily, "What are you doing?" Li Mu asked back, "What are you doing in broad daylight?" Li Mu's official uniform still had some effect. The young man said, "I am pursuing Miss Enin." "What? Is this against the law?" Li Mu said, "It is not against the law to pursue a girl. But if you force her when she is unwilling, it is different." The young man frowned. Just as he was about to say something, someone ran over to him and whispered something in his ear. The young man's face changed. He glanced at Li Mu but didn't say anything and hurriedly left. Although he was in the academy, he had heard of the name Li Mu before. This was a complete lunatic who was not afraid of anything. Although he was not afraid of the constables of the Luoyang government, he did not want to provoke a lunatic. After the young man left, Miss Enin was relieved. She put down her guqin and bowed to Li Mu. She said gratefully, "Thank you for helping me out. It is my duty to protect the people of Luoyang." Li Mu smiled and looked at her. "Moreover, Hanyan's friends are my friends. If you encounter any problems in the future, you can come to the Luoyang government to find me." Although Lu Hanyan said that he was not allowed to fool around in Luoyang, standing up for her good sister could not be considered as fooling around. Moreover, as a constable, Li Mu had the duty to protect the people of Luoyang. Hearing Lu Hanyan's name, Miss Enin was stunned. Then she looked up at Li Mu and asked in surprise, "Sir, do you know Sister Lu? Where is she now? Is she okay?" Li Mu said, "She and Wanwan are in the North County. They are both fine." Hearing Wanwan's name, Enin did not have any doubts that the person in front of her knew Lu Hanyan. Her expression was a bit agitated and angry. She said, "She left without even saying goodbye. How can she be a good sister?" Lu Hanyan had mentioned this to Li Mu. Although her experience in the music house was a bit bumpy, she had made a few good friends in the past 10 years. She did not want to face the scene of parting. After redeeming herself, she left quietly with Wanwan without telling anyone. From Miss Enin's reaction, the feelings between them should be sincere. Hearing Lu Hanyan's news, Enin was clearly a little agitated. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. She wiped her eyes and said, "They left without saying anything. They made me worry for so long. They're 2 weak women. What if they encounter bad people?" Li Mu's lips curled up. The 2 of them were no longer weak women. One had a purine body and the other had natural spirit eyes. They had countless treasures on them. Bad people were probably more afraid of meeting them. After a while, Enin looked up at Li Mu and asked curiously, "Sir, how do you know Sister Hanyan?" Li Mu explained, "I was transferred from the North County to the Divine Capital a month ago. Before that, I was with Hanyan and Wanwan in the North County." From his words, it seemed that he was very close to Sister Lu and Wanwan. Enin looked at Li Mu and asked curiously, "May I ask what is the relationship between Sir and Sister Hanyan?" Li Mu smiled and said, "She is my fiancée." Enin exclaimed and covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with surprise and shock. After she came back to her senses, she did not even care about her zither and quickly ran backstage. In the hall, there were still some guests who had not left. When they heard the conversation between the 2, most of them were stunned. "No way Miss Hanyan is his fiancée? How is that possible? He must be talking nonsense. Is he worthy of Lady Lu? A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. You look so what if you're pretty? Is Miss Lu such a superficial person?" Li Mu heard a clamor. These people looked at him with unkind eyes and there was a sour smell in the air. Soon there were messy footsteps from backstage. Enin ran out with a few girls. Where is Sister Hanyan's husband? Hey, don't push me. Let me see first." A few girls ran out from backstage and surrounded Li Mu. They sized him up from head to toe. "He looks okay. He is worthy of Sister Hanyan. But he is a little young. He is at least 3 years younger than Sister Hanyan. Hey, a woman 3 years older than you. Age is not a problem." Enin coughed and said, "Be careful. Don't be rude to brother-in-law." One of the girls looked at Li Mu and said in disbelief, "Are you really Sister Hanyan's husband?" Li Mu said, "Not yet." The girl said, "How can you prove it?" Li Mu waved his hand and the images of Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan appeared in front of them. "Our brother-in-law knows magic. It is Sister Hanyan and Wan Wan." "Wan Wan, this little girl, why did her face become round again? Is brother-in-law a cultivator?" "No one dares to pester Sister Hanyan anymore." Li Mu's move completely shocked the girls and confirmed his identity. They immediately became well-behaved in front of Li Mu. "Hello, brother-in-law. I am Miao Miao. I am Xianxia. I am 16. Brother-in-law, just call me Little 7. Lu Hanyan had entered the music house very early. Some of the girls in the same batch as her had already left. Some of them had taken advantage of their youth to marry into rich families as concubines. Some had even become someone else's mistress. Her age and qualifications were very high in the music house. After coming to the music house, she had a few more sisters-in-law. Feeling their sincere feelings, Li Mu was also happy for Lu Hanyan. He smiled at the girls and said, "Hanyan will come to the divine capital in about a year. You will be able to see her then. My name is Li Mu. I work in the divine capital. If you encounter any trouble, you can come to the divine capital to find me." Miao Miao's face was filled with doubt. She muttered, "Li Mu? I seem to have heard this name before." Soon she recalled something. Yinin and the others were also shocked. Brother-in-law is Li Mu, the Li Mu who took care of those officials' children and caused a ruckus in the Ministry of Justice? Brother-in-law made the heavens strike Zhou Chuchu to death. He even scolded Assistant Minister Zhou in the Ministry of Justice. "Oh my God, I was just watching the show outside the Ministry of Justice that day." Soon the girls' eyes began to sparkle as they looked at Li Mu. For more than a month the people living in the divine capital might not have seen Li Mu, but they had definitely heard of his name. He took care of those rich kids, caused a ruckus in the Ministry of Justice, forced some officials to change the law, and abolished the silver for crimes. He had fundamentally sought the well-being of the people. He had avenged the wronged and caused the wrath of the heavens to strike Zhou Chuchu to death. He had gotten rid of a great evil for the divine capital. Countless people had seen it with their own eyes. Although they had never seen him, they were already filled with admiration for him. Yinin's eyes widened. She looked at Li Mu and asked, "Brother-in-law, are you really that Li Mu?" Li Mu smiled. "There is only one person called Li Mu in the divine capital." "Wow, brother-in-law is so powerful. Let's see who dares to pester and bully us in the future." Little 7 and 16 were the youngest. They were only 16 or 17 years old. They jumped up happily and pulled Li Mu's arm. They cheered and said, "We have a backer in the future." Xiaobai stood at the side and watched anxiously. However, these people were Sister Lu's friends, so she could only watch anxiously. Li Mu was not good at dealing with this kind of situation. He pulled his hands back and said, "All right, I still have to go out and patrol. If you encounter any trouble, remember to find me at the government office." Li Mu had stayed in the music house for a while. He bid farewell to the girls and left the wonderful sound pavilion with Xiaobai. "Brother-in-law, goodbye. Come here often to see us. We'll save the best spot for you. It's free." Yinin looked at his back and said, "I didn't expect Sister Hanyan to have found a husband. I'm really happy for her." Little 7 said, "Brother-in-law is really powerful. That day outside the Ministry of Justice, I heard him scolding Assistant Minister Zhou in front of the Ministry of Justice. That's the Zhou family. Other than brother-in-law, who in the divine capital would dare to offend the Zhou family?" 16's face was filled with happiness. She said, "Hee, it's good that brother-in-law is powerful. Let's see who dares to bully us in the future." Although the status of musicians and performers in the hearts of people was better than prostitutes who used their beauty to entertain people, they were still inferior. Although there were many officials and nobles who came to the music house to listen to music, there were only a few who really looked up to them. As musicians, it was common to be harassed when they went out to play. Among them, some guests would be polite and some guests would be overboard. Many of the musicians who were not famous had been molested. There were even musicians who were sullied by guests when they were playing for guests alone in the pavilion. However, that guest had a powerful background and the music house could only let it go. As musicians, they had no sense of security. In fact, they were very envious of Sister Hanyan who could control her own fate. At this time, Xianxia suddenly thought of something and said, "The female constable by brother-in-law's side is so beautiful. Even I can't help but like her." Miao Miao said, "She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." Even those clothes can't hide her beauty. How can Sister Hanyan be at ease with leaving such a girl by brother-in-law's side? Little Seven thought about it and said, brother-in-law is alone in the divine capital. We have to help Sister Hanyan keep an eye on him. We can't let other little vixens take brother-in-law away. Chapter 238. Ever since he lost to Li Mu in a game of chess, the woman in his dream flew into a rage out of humiliation and ravaged him. She had not appeared for several days. Her time of appearance was very irregular, and her emotions were also very complicated and changeable. Sometimes she was calm and sometimes she was manic. This caused Li Mu to be alarmed even before he slept. However, this woman was not as scary as the description of the inner demon in the book. Even though Li Mu could not defeat her in his dream, his mastery of various Tao techniques and supernatural powers was becoming more and more refined. Mantras and abhijna could be improved gradually through daily practice. However, there was a limit to this improvement. When fighting with others, the situation could change in an instant. No matter how skilled one was in daily practice, it was inevitable that one would be flustered in a real battle. Actual combat was the best way to improve one's strength. However, actual combat meant danger. In reality, when one was fighting with one's life, all of one's previous efforts would be for naught if they failed once. In the past, Li Mu had Suhi to teach him moves. Now that they were separated, Li Mu also lost an opponent who could train him. Until he met the woman in his dream. Dreams were illusory. No matter what happened in the dream, it would not affect reality. However, experience in fights of magical powers was really accumulating. He could completely use the inner demon as his own whetstone to help him increase his experience in fighting enemies. After thinking this through, Li Mu looked forward to her appearance. Unfortunately, his inner demon was different. Whether it appeared or not was completely a probability event. There was no rule to speak of. In the morning, he and Xiaobai patrolled more than a dozen markets and only mediated a few neighborhood disputes. The two of them ate outside. When they passed by the great music lane, they came in and sat for a while. Lu Hanyan's former sisters were very enthusiastic about Li Mu. Xiaobai looked at them nervously. Is Sister Hanyan still like before, only eating a little every day? One must have gained weight, right? Sister Hanyan said that she would open her own music lane in the future. Did she open it in the end? The few of them surrounded Li Mu and asked all sorts of questions about Lu Hanyan. Li Mu answered them one by one. Yinin said with some envy, I really envy Sister Hanyan. She is finally living the life she wants. Li Mu, if you want, that's fine too. Chimey shook its head and said, after Sister Hanyan redeemed herself and left, the business was greatly affected. If we redeem ourselves now, it won't be so easy. The owner won't let us go so easily. XNXN also said, we also can't earn as much money as Sister Hanyan. In order to redeem herself, she played for 12 hours a day. She really didn't even care about her life. Li Mu felt a little distressed. He knew that Lu Hanyan had suffered all these years, but he didn't expect it to be so bitter. She looked weak, but she was actually very stubborn. As long as she set her mind on something, no matter how difficult it was, she would persevere and complete it. And once she made a decision, very few people could make her change her mind. After a while, two figures came down from upstairs. The two girls said happily, we are going to play together later. Brother-in-law, do you want to stay and watch? Li Mu, no, I still have work to do. I will leave in a while. The two girls revealed a disappointed expression. Li Mu noticed that Little Seven's forehead was bruised. He asked, what happened to your forehead? Little Seven lowered her head and shook it. It's fine. Chimey and XNXIN's lips trembled, but they didn't say anything in the end. Li Mu sensed that something was amiss and asked, what happened? The girls lowered their heads and didn't say anything. Only the youngest, 16, said angrily, it's all because of that Xianxia. He ordered Sister Little Seven to play a solo in the private room and wanted to force himself on Sister Little Seven. Luckily, we heard Sister Little Seven's shout and rushed in to stop him. Sister Little Seven's head hit the headboard and was bleeding. Li Mu asked, didn't you report it to the authorities? Chimey sighed. The owner reported it to the authorities. Then the Ministry of Justice came and took Jianghu away. We saw him walk out of the Ministry of Justice with our own eyes. The Ministry of Justice didn't dare to offend the Academy. Li Mu frowned. Why didn't you come to me? 16 lowered her head and touched her fingertips. She whispered, Jianghu is a student of the Academy. Sister Enine said that we can't offend the academy. She didn't want us to cause trouble for brother-in-law. After coming to Luoyang, Li Mu was least afraid of trouble. On the contrary, he was afraid of no trouble at all. These days, the psychokinesis he obtained from the people had been decreasing day by day. He just needed to do something to bring him back to the people's sight. Li Mu's face darkened. He said, "How dare they protect such a villain? Come, follow me to the Ministry of Justice." Little Seven looked up at him and shook her head. "Forget it, brother-in-law. I'm fine." Li Mu said, "No, we can't just let this go. Otherwise people will bully you in the future." Chimey sighed and persuaded Li Mu. "We are of low status and have long been used to it. The Luoyang now is not the Luoyang of the past. They won't dare to go too far." Li Mu shook his head. "If I don't do anything while you are bullied, how am I going to explain it to Sister Lu? Don't be afraid. It's just the Ministry of Justice. With me here, justice will be served." Little Seven said, "Brother-in-law," Li Mu asked, "don't you trust me?" Little Seven bit her lips and finally said, "I'll listen to brother-in-law." Under the lead of Li Mu and Xiao Bai, a group of people walked out of Great Music Lane and went to the Ministry of Justice. After a while, a middle-aged woman ran out of Great Music Lane and said in fear, "It's over, it's over. These ignorant girls want to kill me." As a constable, Li Mu's duty was to clean up all the injustices in the Luoyang. Even if Little Seven wasn't Lu Hanyan's sister, he wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Moreover, Lu Hanyan's sister was his sister. Otherwise, when she came to the Luoyang in the future, how could Li Mu raise his head in front of her? It would have been more convenient for the Luoyang government to take over this case. However, Li Mu thought about it. Lord Jianghu was from the academy. If it involved the academy's case, it might be difficult for him. Moreover, this case was clearly a hot potato. After coming to the Luoyang, Li Mu had caused enough trouble for Lord Jianghu. Lord Jianghu had treated him well. If he threw this big trouble to him, it would be too inhumane. When Li Mu walked on the streets, he would attract a lot of attention. Many people even went up to greet him. When he walked through the streets with a few beautiful girls, 100% of the people turned to look at him. Some of the Luoyang citizens couldn't help but ask, "Constable Li, where are we going?" Li Mu replied, "The Ministry of Justice." When the crowd heard that, they perked up. There was going to be a good show to watch. Ever since Constable Li came to the Luoyang, they had gotten used to the bustle. They weren't used to it after so many days of peace. For a moment, the citizens who had nothing to do followed Li Mu to the Ministry of Justice from afar. When the butcher on the street saw this, he slammed his boning knife on the chopping board and said to the waiter of the tea house next door, "Watch my stall. I'm going to watch the show." Although the waiter of the tea house also wanted to watch the show, if he left, the shopkeeper would definitely deduct his money. When he turned back to look at the counter, he realized that the shopkeeper was gone. At the entrance of the Ministry of Justice's yamen. When the two gatekeepers saw the crowd of citizens heading toward the Ministry of Justice, led by Li Mu from the Luoyang yamen, they immediately felt a headache coming on. They turned around and ran into the yamen without hesitation. Li Mu walked to the entrance of the Ministry of Justice, bent down, picked up the drumstick and hit the drum hard. Inside the Ministry of Justice, the director of the Ministry of Justice was drinking tea. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of tea. He put down the teacup, stood up and said angrily, "Who's hitting the drum outside?" Although the drum outside the Ministry of Justice was for the citizens to cry out their grievances, it didn't make much noise on normal days. The sound of the drum was annoying. It was fine if it interrupted the director of the Ministry of Justice's work, but if he was in the middle of an important activity and was startled by the drum, the consequences would be unimaginable. The yamen had a rule that anyone who wanted to hit the drum would be stopped and interrogated. If they had any grievances, they would have to talk about it. The director of the Ministry of Justice's pants were wet. When he saw the gatekeeper running in, he said angrily, "What are you doing? Why didn't you stop someone from hitting the drum?" The gatekeeper said in distress, "Sir, the one who hit the drum is Li Mu. I didn't dare to stop him." The director of the Ministry of Justice was shocked. "What? What's Li Mu doing here again?" After the incident with Zhou Chu, he gave up on the idea of avenging his humiliation on Li Mu. He could even summon the heavenly lightning to help him. This ability was too terrifying. The officials of the Ministry of Justice privately called him the Lightning King. He didn't have to pay with his life even if he killed someone. After all, the heavens were the scapegoat. Who would dare to make the heavens pay with their life? The director of the Ministry of Justice had cultivated for 30 years, but he was only at the 4th level. He couldn't take more than a few purple heavenly lightning strikes. The director of the Ministry of Justice quickly said, "Go out and tell him that I'm not here. Tell him to go back." Li Mu walked in from outside and said, "Sir Yang, how can you be like this? The crime of neglecting your duty is not light." The director of the Ministry of Justice looked at Li Mu, who was still holding the drumstick in his hand. He knew that he couldn't avoid it today. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What are you doing here?" Li Mu said, "I want to report a case." In the court of the Ministry of Justice, the director of the Ministry of Justice sat above and asked Li Mu, as the constable of the Divine Capital, "Why didn't you report a case to the Divine Capital? Why did you come to the Ministry of Justice?" Li Mu said, "Because this case is related to the Ministry of Justice." Li Mu held Xiaoqi's hand and said, "This morning Xianxia, a student of the 100 River Academy, wanted to rape my sister in the Great Music Lane. He was stopped and handed over to the Ministry of Justice. However, the Ministry of Justice let him go." "Sir, don't you have an explanation for this?" The director of the Ministry of Justice glanced at him and said, "He didn't succeed. I've already reprimanded him. What else do you want?" Li Mu's face darkened. He asked, "Sir Yang, you're the director of the Ministry of Justice. You should know that the crime of attempted rape is not much lighter than rape. How can the Ministry of Justice let him go so easily?" The director of the Ministry of Justice said, "According to Jianghu, he was confused for a moment after drinking and then realized it himself. According to the law, Jianghu took the initiative to stop the violence. This is not considered attempted rape. Is my judgment wrong?" Li Mu said, "Sir, don't you think it's a bit hasty to close the case based on Jianghu's one-sided statement?" The director of the Ministry of Justice said indifferently, "I'm the director of the Ministry of Justice. You're just a small constable. Do I need you to teach me how to judge a case?" "Well." Li Mu pointed at the director of the Ministry of Justice and said loudly, "As an official of the Ministry of Justice, it's bad enough that you don't make decisions for the people. How can you be in cahoots with such a villain?" He pointed at the top of his head and said angrily, "Damned God, if you have eyes, you can punish such a muddle-headed official." The director of the Ministry of Justice's expression changed drastically. He jumped down from the table and covered Li Mu's mouth. He said in horror, "Let's talk nicely. Constable Li, don't do this." Chapter 239. Li Mu was just putting on an act. He glanced at the director and said, "It was you who didn't talk to me properly first?" The director wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said, "It's just a small case. There's no need to trouble the heavens." "It's not necessary, really not necessary," Li Mu said seriously. "Perhaps it's just a small case to you, sir. But to me it concerns my sister's innocence and even her life. Do you think it's not necessary?" The director said awkwardly, "When did you have a sister?" Li Mu said calmly, "I just recognized her as my sworn sister." "Let's talk about it slowly." The director pointed at a constable and said, "Bring a chair for Constable Li." After going through so many things, he completely understood. Li Mu did not purposely go against the old party. Today he dared to make a scene in the Ministry of Justice and offend the old party. Tomorrow he dared to offend the new party and strike the disciples of the Zhou family into pieces. He did not belong to any party or power. He was just a reckless young man who did not care about his life. He had no grudges with Li Mu in the past. It was just a small conflict. There was no need for him to risk his life. The constable brought a chair. After Li Mu sat down, the director said, "I was wrong just now. Don't take it to heart. Constable Li Jianghu is a student of the academy. The academy has a high status. Without the academy's permission, if the Ministry of Justice detained their student, I would not be able to withstand the pressure from the people, the imperial court, and other parties." Li Mu asked, "Are you going to let such a villain go unpunished because you're worried about offending people?" The director thought for a while and suddenly said, "Luoyang Magistrate Zhang Chun is upright and outspoken. He is not afraid of the powerful. Why don't the Ministry of Justice send this case to the Luoyang government?" "You can do whatever you want," Li Mu said. "Since the Ministry of Justice has already made a judgment, I don't think it's a good idea to pass it on to the Luoyang government. If the files are messed up, wouldn't a simple case become more complicated?" The director of the Ministry of Justice sighed and said, "Your sister is only slightly injured. Why does Arrestor Li have to offend the academy? The academy is very protective of its own people and has many connections. There is no benefit in offending them. I'm doing this for your own good. Little Seven tugged at Li Mu's sleeves and whispered, brother-in-law, forget it. Li Mu didn't want to let it go, but seeing that Little Seven was about to cry, he could only bring them back first. The director of the Ministry of Justice stood at the entrance of the Yamen and waved at Li Mu. Constable Li, take care. After sending the god of plagues away, he walked back to the Yamen and heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice standing in the courtyard, he bowed slightly and said, Assistant Minister Zhou. Zhou Zhong asked, how was it? The director of the Ministry of Justice let out a long sigh and said, I understand now. Arrestor Li is a person who can be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. If you were to be tough with him, he would be tougher than you. Moreover, he is not afraid of anyone. Fortunately, he is not in the Ministry of Justice. Otherwise, the Ministry of Justice would be in chaos because of him. Zhou Zhong said, I'm asking you, what do you think of Li Mu as a person? The director of the Ministry of Justice thought for a while and said, I used to think that he was arrogant and annoying. Now I think he is actually quite amazing. The things that he does are things that others don't dare to do. Zhou Zhong smiled and walked into the Yamen with his hands behind his back. The director of the Ministry of Justice followed behind him and said, the case of the Great Music Workshop is just a small case. However, something big happened in Danyang County. The county magistrate of Ani County under Danyang County suddenly died in his home. After the investigation, the Danyang County government found out that he was assassinated. Assassinated? Zhou Zhong raised his eyebrows and asked, what about the county magistrate of Ani? The director of the Ministry of Justice shook his head and said, I don't know. Sir, you suspect that he is a heartless official who oppresses the people. This caused the righteous people to be dissatisfied and thus caused the death of his life? Zhou Zhong nodded and said, it's hard to say whether it's true or not. First, send someone to the Ministry of Personnel to get the resume of the county magistrate of Ani. On the streets of Luoyang, Xiaoqi lowered his head and pinched the corner of his clothes. He whispered, brother-in-law, you won't blame me, right? Li Mu sighed and said, I know that you are doing this for my own good. However, this will only encourage the unhealthy trend in Luoyang. Yinin advised Li Mu, brother-in-law, you have just arrived in Luoyang not long ago. You don't know how important the academy is in Luoyang and the Great Zhou. For generations, all the officials in the imperial court came from the academy. The people also respect and trust the academy. If you offend the academy, they can easily ruin your future. Xiaoqi and Yinin were all thinking for him. Li Mu could not reprimand them. After sending them back to the Great Music Bar, he returned to the government office with Xiao Bai. In the Great Music Lane, the middle-aged woman pointed at their heads and scolded angrily, how powerful do you think my background is? Is the Ministry of Justice a place where you can mess around? Every single one of you has no conscience. Will you only stop after I close my shop and send me to prison? She slapped their butts and said, I am still counting on you to make money. Go back to your rooms. In the future, play a solo in the accord room. Don't close the door. When Li Mu returned to the government office, he saw Zhang Chun pacing back and forth in the yard. Seeing Li Mu return, Zhang Chun asked, do you have any more pears? Li Mu asked, sir, don't you think the gong pears are sour? Zhang Chun said, this official likes to eat sour food. Li Mu placed the gong pears in the flask heaven ring. He flipped his hand and a pear appeared in his palm. He handed it to Zhang Chun. Zhang Chun had seen Li Mu's flask heaven magic treasure on the day of Zhou Chuxing's death. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could not help but sigh at the difference between people. Her Majesty's grace to him was truly meticulous and meticulous, from the moment he was young to the moment he was young. He took the pear and said, don't be so stingy. Give me another one. Li Mu threw him another one. Zhang Chun did not eat it. He just put it in his sleeve. Li Mu asked, sir, did anything happen in the imperial court today? It's nothing serious. Zhang Chun recalled and said, Her Majesty wanted to reduce the number of students in the academy. She was opposed by Baichuan and Qingyun Academy. The deputy dean of Baichuan Academy directly scolded Her Majesty in the imperial court. He said that Her Majesty wanted to overturn Emperor Wen's achievements and destroy the accumulation of Great Zhou over the past 100 years. He reminded Her Majesty not to become a sinner. Although the academy could not participate in politics, a few of the higher-ups in the academy could attend the imperial court. This was a rule set during the reign of Emperor Wen. Because of their superior status and no interests involved, They could even criticize the emperor when they met a fatuous emperor. This was also the power granted to them by Emperor Wen. Li Mu asked, "What did Her Majesty say?" Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "Her Majesty said nothing." It seemed that Mr. Mei was right. The Empress was indeed a broad-minded and wise ruler. She could still remain silent even after being criticized like this. But even if the Empress could tolerate it, Li Mu couldn't. Since he already knew, he could not pretend that nothing had happened. He had to share the burden of the ruler. The Empress was humiliated. If he did not do something for the Empress, he would be too ashamed to eat the tribute pears she rewarded him. Li Mu thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "Sir, if someone attempted to rape a woman, how should he be punished?" Zhang Chun asked, "Was he stopped midway or stopped by himself?" Li Mu said, "The woman resisted and attracted others to stop him." Zhang Chun said, "The punishment for attempted rape is 100 beatings. Generally, the punishment is more than 3 years and less than 10 years in prison. In serious cases, the punishment is death by beheading." Li Mu said, "There was an attempted rape case in Chengdu just now." Zhang Chun asked, "Did you catch him?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No." Zhang Chun glared at him and said, "Then what are you waiting for? Go and catch him." Li Mu held a fist and palm salute and said, "Yes, sir." Wait. He was about to leave when Zhang Chun suddenly stopped him. He looked at Li Mu suspiciously and asked, "Is the person you're talking about a disciple of the Zhou family?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No." Zhang Chun touched his chin and said, "Then it's the Shao royal family." Li Mu shook his head again and said, "No." "Is he an influential person in Chengdu?" "No." "Is he a disciple of an official of the 4th rank or above?" "No." Zhang Chun finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, "What are you waiting for? Go and catch him. I hate criminals who rape women the most. The imperial court should really change the law and execute all these people once and for all." After a moment, Wang Wu and Li Mu came out of the government office and asked, "Boss, where are we going to catch him?" Li Mu said, "100 Rivers Academy." Wang Wu was stunned and asked, "Where?" Li Mu looked at him and asked, "You've lived in Chengdu for more than 20 years. Do you know where 100 Rivers Academy is?" Wang Wu immediately explained, "Of course I know where 100 Rivers Academy is. But boss, the academy doesn't allow outsiders to enter. We can't even enter the academy's gate, let alone catch him." Li Mu frowned. The academy was not the Ministry of Justice. There were countless experts there. Breaking into the academy was not much easier than breaking into the ancestral court of Fulu School. Li Mu was not arrogant enough to break into the academy. He thought for a moment and turned to walk into the government office. Wang Wu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that even the fearless boss knew that the academy was not to be trifled with. Soon, he saw Li Mu come out of the government office again, but he had changed his official uniform into a regular one. Wang Wu scratched his head and asked, "Boss, we haven't opened the government office yet. What are you?" After a moment, at the gate of 100 Rivers Academy. Li Mu had just approached the gate when an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man reached out to stop him and asked, "Who are you? What are you doing at the academy?" The academy was indeed an academy. Even the guards at the gate were in the divine power realm. Li Mu smiled and said, "I'm Jianghu's relative. I have something important to tell him." The old man said expressionlessly, "Those who are not students of the academy are not allowed to enter. If you have something to say, I'll pass it on for you." Li Mu shook his head and said, "This is very important. I have to tell him personally. I don't have to enter the academy. I just have to ask Xianxia to come out." If anyone breaks the law, the governor's office has the right to punish them. The old man glared at Li Mu and did not say anything more. He reached out to grab the chain in Li Mu's hand. Li Mu grabbed the chain with one hand and grabbed the air with the other. A fulu appeared in his hand. He looked at the old man and said coldly, "Using violence to threaten a public servant and obstructing official business. Even if I kill you in front of the academy today, I won't have to take responsibility." The old man stopped in his tracks and looked at the fulu in Li Mu's hand. He was afraid and did not dare to step forward. There were teachers in the academy who were proficient in the fulu. He knew what the purple cloud thunder charm looked like. The charm's power was not ordinary. If he was hit by it, even if he did not die, he would lose half his life. Seeing the old man retreat, Li Mu dragged Xianxia with the iron chain and swaggered towards the yamen. Xianxia was dragged by Li Mu. His face was full of panic and he shouted, "Save me!" The old man gritted his teeth and went back into the academy. In a classroom in the academy, the gray-haired old man stopped teaching and frowned. "What? You said Xianxia was taken away by the Luoyang yamen?" The old man said, "He said Xianxia was related to a case and wanted to bring him back to the yamen for investigation." The gray-haired old man threw down the book and said angrily, "How dare they? Since when did they have the right to interfere in the academy's matters?" He waved his sleeves and said in a deep voice, "Follow me to the Luoyang yamen." The Baichuan Academy was not far from the yamen. Li Mu dragged Jianghu on the street and attracted many people's attention. Many people greeted Li Mu every day and were already familiar with him. They approached him and asked, "Constable Li, what crime did this man commit?" Li Mu said, "Attempted rape of a woman. You have to take this as a warning and obey the law." That person quickly said, "We won't do such a thing even if we're beaten to death. This guy is dressed like a dog but I didn't expect him to be a beast." Another person said, "Look at his clothes. He's definitely not from an ordinary family. I wonder which family he's from in Luoyang." He accidentally fell into Constable Li's hands again. There seemed to be 3 vertical blue ripples on the chest of his clothes. 3 blue ripples? Isn't that the symbol of the Baichuan Academy? Is he a student of the Baichuan Academy? Yes, he's a student of the Baichuan Academy. He's wearing the academy uniform. Li Mu dragged Jianghu away. The people were still talking behind them. The academy had a high status in the hearts of the people. It was a place that nurtured talents for the country. For more than 100 years, the academy students had contributed a lot to the great show. How can a student of the Baichuan Academy be a rapist? Do you think Constable Li caught the wrong person? Behind him were several students who were also wearing the uniform of the 100 Rivers Academy. Jianghu looked at the old man with hope on his face. He shouted, "Sir, save me." Zhang Chun walked up to the old man and cupped his fists. He said, "I'm Zhang Chun of the Divine Capital. May I know who you are?" The old man in luxurious clothes said lightly, "My surname is Fang. I'm an instructor of the 100 Rivers Academy." Zhang Chun said, "So it's Sir Fang. I've heard so much about you." The old man in luxurious clothes went straight to the point. "May I know what crime my student has committed for you to detain him in the yamen, Sir Zhang?" Zhang Chun said, "This person attempted to rape a woman. Although he failed, he must be punished by the law." The old man in luxurious clothes said, "Jianghu is a student of the academy. The academy will punish him for his mistake. There's no need for the yamen to do it." Zhang Chun shook his head. "He didn't make a mistake. He broke the law." The old man in luxurious clothes asked, "May I ask if he ever succeeded in raping a woman?" Zhang Chun shook his head. "No." The old man in luxurious clothes said, "If that's the case, how can you say he broke the law?" Zhang Chun didn't explain this time, so the old man thought that he had nothing to say. He grabbed the iron chain around Jianghu's neck and pulled with force. The iron chain was torn apart by him. He glanced at Jianghu and said coldly, "You disgraceful thing. Scram back to the academy immediately and accept your punishment." Jianghu shuddered and quickly stood in the midst of the students. The old man glanced at Zhang Chun and said, "Sorry to disturb you." With that said, he led the group away from the yamen. From beginning to end, Li Mu did not stop them. With his understanding of Zhang Chun, it was hard to say if Jianghu had not entered the yamen. Once he entered, it would not be easy for him to leave. Even if he left now, he would have to return sooner or later. This is too much. As soon as the old man left, Zhang Chun pointed at the door and shouted, "How dare they barge into the yamen and kidnap a criminal in broad daylight? Do they have no respect for the law? Does His Majesty even exist? I'll write a memorial to His Majesty." Chapter 241. The longer Li Mu knew Zhang Chun, the more he realized that Zhang Chun had many tricks up his sleeve despite his thick eyebrows and big eyes. If he insisted on not letting Jianghu go, the academy's instructor would not dare to snatch Jianghu from the yamen. The academy's status was superior, but it did not mean that its students were above the law. The instructor would only dare to take Jianghu away if he pretended to be afraid of the academy. When he took Jianghu away, he gave the yamen enough reason to do so. But by doing so, he would offend the Baichuan Academy. Li Mu reminded him, "Sir, aren't you afraid of the academy?" Zhang Chun spat and said, "What's there to be afraid of? This is the government office. If I let him take him away so easily, I will lose face. Where will the law and His Majesty's face be?" Li Mu felt that Zhang Chun was going to throw caution to the wind. Lord Zhang, who used to be as timid as a mouse, had now become as hot-headed as Li Mu. What had he experienced? Outside the Luoyang Yamen, the people who were attracted saw the people from the academy barge into the Yamen and walk out after a while. Jianghu, who was handcuffed by Li Mu, was also in the crowd and could not help but be shocked. He's out just like that? Raping a woman is such a serious crime. He's out just like that? What else can he do? You know what kind of place the academy is and how many connections they have in the imperial court. Not to mention rape, even murder and arson. As long as the academy protects them, nothing will happen. The people could not understand what they saw with their own eyes. The academy had a high status in the hearts of the people. For 100 years, the academy had been sending talents to the imperial court. Most of the 36 counties in the Great Zhou, including the Luoyang, were governed by the academy's students. The academy had contributed greatly. The 4 major academies in the Luoyang were respected by the people, be it the instructors or the students. They only saw the academy's glory, but rarely saw this side of the academy. The Baichuan Academy. The old man in fine clothes who had returned to the academy looked at Jianghu and snorted. He said angrily, "Bastard." Jianghu hurriedly knelt down and said, "Teacher, this student was wrong. This student will never dare to do it again." The old man said, "This old man has saved you this time. If there's a next time, you'll have to fend for yourself." Jianghu repeatedly promised, "I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again." The old man coldly looked at him and said, "If you were a bit more diligent in your cultivation, you wouldn't have been so easily taken down by a Jushin officer. Don't go out to drink and have fun. Spend your time on cultivation. If you still can't reach the Jushin level in a year, then get the hell out of the academy." After the old man finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. Jianghu heaved a sigh of relief and whispered, "That was close." A student beside him smiled at him and said, "Didn't you do this kind of thing smoothly before? How come you almost fell into the gutter this time?" Jianghu said hatefully, "It was fine this time. I even went to the Ministry of Justice and still came back. It's all that damned constable's fault. He almost ruined my future. This debt, I'll settle it sooner or later." The student said, "It's just a constable. When you leave the academy next year and get a good position in the divine capital, there will be plenty of ways to kill him." Crepe Myrtle Hall. There wasn't anything important to discuss in today's morning court. After the 6 assistant ministers reported their work, the young female official walked out from behind the curtain and said, "If there is nothing else, then today's morning court will end here." The officials put away their tablets and were about to leave when a voice suddenly came from the back of the hall. "Your Majesty, this official has a memorial." Everyone couldn't help but look at the back. During the morning court, the officials stood according to their ranks. Those standing at the back were usually the lowest-ranking officials. When they came to the court, they were just going through the motions. Very few of them would take the initiative to speak. At the end of everyone's line of sight, at the entrance of Crepe Myrtle Hall, an official in the second-last row stood up. It was the first time for most of the officials in the hall to see him. The official took a few steps forward and came to the center of the hall. He bowed and said, "I'm Zhang Chun of the Divine Capital. I have something important to report." When he reported his official position, many people in the hall realized that he was Zhang Chun. The abolition of the silver in lieu of crime was due to the letter he had sent. The children of several officials in the hall had all suffered under his hands. He had only been in the Divine Capital for a few months, but he had been promoted twice. He even had the right to discuss matters in the court. He had stepped on these officials. The young female official stood at the top and said calmly, "Report." Zhang Chun raised his head and said, "Instructor Fang of the Baichuan Academy forced his way into the Yamen 3 days ago and took away a criminal from the Divine Capital Yamen. This case involves the Academy, so I dare not make a judgment. Your Majesty, please make a decision." As soon as he finished speaking, there was an uproar in the court. No one had expected that Zhang Chun would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. He had just proposed to abolish the substitute silver last time, and now he was accusing the Academy. No wonder Li Mu of the Divine Capital Yamen was so arrogant. He had a superior who was even more arrogant than him. It had been so many years since someone accused the Academy in the court. This was the first time. Nonsense. As soon as Zhang Chun finished speaking, an old man wearing a crown stepped forward and said coldly, "I'm an instructor of the Baichuan Academy. How could I do such a thing?" Behind the curtain, a dignified voice said, "Vice President Chen, why do you have to jump to conclusions so early? Whether it's true or not, won't it be clear when Instructor Fang confronts the Divine Capital Yamen?" Vice President Chen said in a low voice, "I'll go back to the academy and bring Instructor Fang to the palace to confront him." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and disappeared. Zhang Chun immediately said, "Your Majesty, please summon Arrestor Li Mu of the Divine Capital Yamen to the palace. He's in charge of this case. He's more familiar with it than I am. He was there when Instructor Fang brought people into the Yamen yesterday. He can testify for me." After a moment of silence, the person behind the curtain said, "Mei Wei, bring Li Mu to the palace." As soon as Mei Wei left, Vice President Chen's figure appeared again. At this time there was another person beside him. It was the old man in the luxurious robe. The old man bowed to the Empress first. "Your Majesty." The young female official said, "Instructor Fang, the Divine Capital Yamen said that you brought people into the Divine Capital Yamen 3 days ago and took away a prisoner. Is this true?" The old man in the luxurious robe glanced at Zhang Chun, and his expression changed slightly. He immediately said, "I did take away a student from the Divine Capital Yamen, but that student didn't break the law. The Divine Capital Yamen ordered people to trick my student out of the academy and forcibly detain him in the Yamen. I heard that I went to the Yamen to rescue him. How can you say that I forced my way in?" Zhang Chun sneered and said, "Your student raped a woman. I ordered Arrestor Li to go to the academy to arrest him, but he was stopped by the academy. He had no choice but to use a trick to lure the criminal out. Later you forced your way into the Yamen and took him back to the academy. Is there any falsehood in my words?" The old man in the luxurious robe said angrily, "My student was just impulsive after drinking. His behavior was a little out of line. The Divine Capital Yamen shouldn't slander me." Zhang Chun asked, "Instructor Fang, do you mean that I can only convict your student if he succeeded in his rape?" The old man in the luxurious robe did not answer directly. He said, "The students of the academy represent the honor of the academy and the future of the imperial court. If you arbitrarily convict them, where will the academy's face go?" Zhang Chun said coldly, "Is the face of the academy more important, or the dignity of the great Zhou's law more important?" The old man in the luxurious robe tried to slander him, but Zhang Chun slandered him with an even bigger accusation. The two of them were at each other's throats in the palace. At this time, footsteps came from outside the palace again. Li Mu, accompanied by Mr. Mei, walked into the palace. This was the first time he came to the place where all the officials were gathered. His gaze swept across everyone's faces, and then he looked up impatiently. Li Mu had been friends with the Empress for a long time, but he had never seen her before. He did not know if she was tall or short, fat or thin, beautiful or ugly. Suddenly being summoned, Li Mu thought that he would be able to see her face. However, he did not expect that there was a curtain between the Empress and the officials. Li Mu stood there and could not see anything. It was not until Mr. Mei poked him that Li Mu came to his senses. He bowed and said, "Divine Capital Yamen Constable Li Mu pays his respects to Her Majesty." "No need for formalities." A dignified voice came from behind the curtain. "Tell me the cause and effect of this case in detail." This dignified voice sounded very familiar to Li Mu, as if he had heard it somewhere before. He thought carefully but could not remember where he had heard it before. It was not until Mr. Mei poked him again that Li Mu came to his senses. He looked up and said, 3 days ago Jianghu, a student of the Baichuan Academy, was listening to music at the Great Music Lane. He was lustful toward a musician and wanted to rape her. The musician called for help and attracted other musicians, so Jianghu did not succeed. After learning about this case, I was ordered by Lord Zhang to go to the academy to arrest Xianxia. Because I could not enter the academy, I could only use a trick to lure Xianxia out and detain him in the capital Yamen. I did not expect that before the Yamen could detain him, he would be taken away by Instructor Fang. The old man in luxurious clothes said angrily, "What do you mean by taken away? When I took Xianxia away, you did not stop me at all." Li Mu said, "You are a strong man in the creation realm and you have helpers. All the constables in the capital Yamen and Lord Zhang were no match for you. How could we dare to stop you? We could only watch you take the criminal away." The chest of the old man in luxurious clothes rose and fell. He said, "Didn't you say that if you did not succeed in raping a woman, it was not a crime?" Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "That was what you said." "I did not say that." The old man in luxurious clothes said angrily, "Why didn't you say that at that time?" Zhang Chun shrugged and said, "I told you that he had violated the law, but you did not believe me. You even destroyed the instruments of torture in the yamen and insisted on taking him away. I was afraid that if I angered you, you would attack me." The old man in luxurious clothes opened his mouth but did not know what to say. He had been in the academy for decades and had never met such a person. This black-hearted official had clearly dug a hole for him to jump into. The Empress thought for a moment, then said, "Give him a chest of pears." Mr. May nodded and said, "That's good. There's a box of pears left." The Empress was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "There is only one box of tribute pears left?" Mr. May said, "In Jianghu County, there are only a few mother trees. They were carefully cultivated by the local government. Every year there are no more than 10 boxes of tribute pears. After they are sent to the palace they have to give some to the West Palace. There aren't many left." The Empress thought for a moment then said, "Then give me half a box. No, give me 3, Luoyang government." Zhang Chun looked at the 3 boxes of tribute pears sent from the palace. He bowed excitedly and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Mr. May said, "I hope that Mr. Zhang will continue to do his job diligently and honestly. Don't let Your Majesty down." Zhang Chun said solemnly, "I will remember." After sending off Mr. May, Zhang Chun picked up a tribute pear and took a bite. He said proudly, "This pear is so sweet." After leaving the palace, Li Mu went straight to the great music bar. The Ministry of Justice would definitely ask Xiaoqi and the others to investigate the case. He needed to tell them in advance so that they would not panic. When Little Seven heard this, she was clearly worried. She was only a lowly musician and had never experienced such a situation. Li Mu looked at her and comforted her, "Don't worry. I will go to the Ministry of Justice with you. You are the victim. They should be the ones worried." When Little Seven heard this, she finally relaxed. At the same time, in the Ministry of Justice, Vice President Chen said to the Minister of the Ministry of Justice, "This matter concerns the reputation of the Academy. I will leave it to you." The Minister of the Ministry of Justice hesitated for a moment and looked up at him. He said, "The behavior of the Academy students has nothing to do with the Academy. If it is handled impartially, the Academy will not be implicated. If the Ministry of Justice is biased, it will be disadvantageous to the Academy. Vice President Chen, you must think carefully." Vice President Chen frowned. He had just declared that Jianghu was innocent in the court. If the Ministry of Justice overturned it, wouldn't he become a joke? At this moment, the Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, said, "The Ministry of Justice has the power to decide the case." The girl was not harmed. As long as Jianghu insists that he was rude after drinking and repents, he will be exempted from punishment. Vice President Chen thought for a moment and said, "I still don't believe that the Academy students would do such a bad thing." The Minister of the Ministry of Justice understood what he meant. He meant that the Ministry of Justice would help the Academy regardless of whether Jianghu was guilty or not. He already knew the inside story of this case. Jianghu knelt on the ground and said, "Sir, please understand. I was impulsive after drinking and was rude to this lady. Later, I remembered the teacher's teachings and suddenly came to my senses. I didn't continue to violate this lady," Enin said angrily. "You only stopped when we rushed to the room," Xianxia said. "At that time I wanted to apologize to this lady." "You misunderstood. You are clearly quibbling." "That is the truth." Jianghu looked up at the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice and clasped his hands. "Sir, please understand. Both sides had their own version of the story. Jianghu said that he stopped the violence voluntarily, but the musician of the great music bar said that he was stopped by others. Although the results of these two cases were the same, the meaning was completely different. The Ministry of Justice's punishment for this case was based on the process of the case. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice said lightly, "I will use the soul manipulation on Xianxia. The truth will be revealed soon." He looked at Jianghu and said, "Raise your head." Jianghu raised his head and looked into the eyes of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice's eyes became deep pools. He asked, Xianxia, let me ask you. When you wanted to violate this lady, did you repent on your own or was it because someone stopped you? Jianghu's eyes were dull. He murmured, I repented on my own and realized that I had made a mistake. I wanted to explain to this lady, but perhaps I was too anxious and was misunderstood by her. Li Mu's expression was ugly. Xiaoqi and the others could not be lying. Either Jianghu had a way to avoid the soul manipulation, or the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice deliberately let him go. Regardless of which possibility it was not something that ordinary people could see through. Jianghu's actions before he was stopped were attributed to him being too anxious to explain. Even if a transcendent expert could reenact the scene, they could not convict him. It was obvious that he had made sufficient preparations before going to court. Even if the Ministry of Justice's punishment was presented to the Empress, it would not be a problem. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice looked at everyone and said, the truth is out. Although Jianghu was in the wrong, he did not deserve to be punished. Seeing that you were able to repent in time, I acquit you. However, you have disturbed this lady, so you must apologize to her and compensate her with 10 taels of silver. Do you have any objections? Jianghu immediately said, thank you, sir, for proving my innocence. He stood up and bowed to Xiaoqi. He said, I was rude after drinking and offended you. I apologize to the lady. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice slammed the gavel and said, the case has been investigated. The court is dismissed. Jianghu left 10 taels of silver and looked at Li Mu and the others. He smiled and strode out of the Ministry of Justice. Li Mu sent Xiaoqi and the others out of the Ministry of Justice. He looked back and walked back. He looked at a figure standing in the courtyard and said slowly, Sir Zhou, you should know better than anyone whether Jianghu is guilty or not, right? Zhou Zhong looked at him and asked, is this important? Li Mu said in a low voice, if right or wrong, justice and justice are not important, what else is important in this world? Zhou Zhong looked into his eyes and said after a long time, you are really like a friend that I haven't seen for many years. Li Mu said coldly, you don't deserve such a friend. Zhou Zhong was not angry. Instead he smiled and said, young man, when you first came to Luoyang, you thought that you were the embodiment of justice and did not care about anyone. They fought with the rich and powerful, corrupt officials and the academy. There were many people like you in the past, but now you are the only one. Do you know why? He said to himself, some people are dead, some are still alive. If the living want to live a better life, they have to become the people they used to hate the most. You will also have such a day, Li Mu said, you can wait and see. Zhou Zhong said, I will wait and see. Li Mu turned around and left in big strides. Zhou Zhong looked at his back and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. The law did not distinguish between relatives and estrangement, high and low. The monarch and his ministers from top to bottom, high and low, all followed the law. Punishing the wrong did not evade the ministers, rewarding the good did not spare the common man. He wanted to implement a thorough rule of law. In addition, he also pointed out the shortcomings of the academy and suggested that the imperial court should select talents from outside the academy. This could effectively prevent the officials from forming cliques and the academy from interfering in politics. Later he failed. His failure was not surprising. It was because he challenged the officials, the nobles, and the academy. Because of this matter, he was demoted and almost exiled. Seeing this, Li Mu's anger and resentment subsided a little. He could not describe what he was feeling in his heart. Those who held the firewood for the people froze to death in the wind and snow. Those who opened the way for justice died in the thorns. This was the true portrayal of Zhou Zhong. Li Mu did not know what happened later, but it was not difficult to guess based on his current status and power. Zhang Chun strolled in from outside and looked at Li Mu with a proud expression. He asked, did His Majesty reward you with anything? Li Mu shook his head and said, no. Zhang Chun smiled and then said regretfully, His Majesty rewarded me with 3 tribute pears. They were much sweeter than the ones I ate from you. Unfortunately, there were only 3. Otherwise, I would have given you one and let you have a taste. Li Mu shook his head and said, I still have half a box at home. Sir, you can keep it for yourself. Feeling a familiar breath, Li Mu walked outside and saw Mr. Mei walking in from outside the yamen. The two people behind her moved a big box into the yard of the yamen. Mr. Mei said to Li Mu, "These spiritual jades are from His Majesty." Li Mu quickly walked forward and opened the box. Seeing that it was full of high-quality spiritual jades, he immediately put them into the flask space. After using up all the spiritual jades he got from the county yamen, he was worried about new ones. He did not expect His Majesty to be so considerate and send them to him so quickly. With these spiritual jades, he and Xiaobai did not have to worry about cultivation resources in a short time. Zhang Chun looked at the box of spiritual jades from afar. He touched the two tribute pears in his sleeve and suddenly felt that the one he ate just now was not as sweet as before. Li Mu knew that he was just doing what he was supposed to do. He said embarrassedly, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why did His Majesty suddenly reward me?" Mr. Mei said, "How can you hide your thoughts from His Majesty? Are you trying to take the opportunity to make trouble for the Academy so that you can avenge His Majesty?"